This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
What's going on, everybody? Let's do this. A beautiful Wednesday in Peg City, and it's time for another couple hours of sports talk here with myself and Michael Remis on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson with you. We got a packed show. The countdown to Bomber home opener continues. 2 more sleeps, Bomber fans. Really looking forward to chopping it up with the new voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on CJOB, Derek Taylor, coming up in a few minutes. Kenny Wiebe is back from an all too brief run at the conference finals. 4 games and it's over. We'll talk to Wiebe about the Stanley Cup playoffs being both in Denver and in Edmonton. And, of course, the latest on more pertinent topics surrounding your Winnipeg Jets when Ken joins us a little later on. And there's a lot of golf to talk about as well. Aaron Cockrell, of course, ready to tee it up, the Manitoban, for the first time on the PGA Tour at the RBC Canadian Open this weekend. Mike McIntyre's there covering it for the Winnipeg Free Press. We talked about that yesterday. We'll get into more of the tournament overall, as well as some more big-name defections to the LIV Tour. Probably 2 of the most polarizing players on the PGA Tour announced today, Bryson DeChambeau and the bad guy, Patrick Reed, who ironically are both Geoff Fienberg's guys. And Fienberg is going to join us later on in the program as well to both discuss that, everything coming out of this launch of the LIV Tour this week, backed by the Saudis, and, of course, the Canadian Open and tee off tomorrow at St. George's. So, going to be a great show. Glad to have you all with us. If you haven't already, folks, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit that red subscribe button. It's completely free. It'll get our content into your feed, as well as you'll see some of the additional things we post throughout the week over on the YouTube channel. And while you're at it, hit that thumbs up button for today's episode. Always appreciate that. And if you're watching it after we go live, we always welcome your comments in the YouTube chat as well. Please don't ever hesitate to drop us a line and let us know how you're feeling about the shows. So we've got a lot going on today. First things first, you know that this show is on the back of the incredible companies in Winnipeg that support us and make this happen each and every day, including Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, Wallace & Wallace, F Apparel, Vita Health Fresh Market, Culligan Water, Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Breezy Bend Country Club, Not Auto Corp, Little Brown Jug, Princess Auto, Boston Pizza, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Assiniboia Downs, Canadian Club Whiskey, and, of course, our betting partners over at Coolbet Canada. Let's get Michael Remis in here. And remember, I was on a bit of a cooler lately when it came to the picks over at Coolbet, but got back on it with the Lightning puck line last night. We spent a bit of time yesterday talking about this game. This was, I think, an opportunity for the Lightning to make a big statement that they were back after that big comeback in Game 3 to avoid going down 3-0. And now we stay on serve. Home ice has reigned supreme so far in this series. It's a best of 3 heading back to MSG after another big win for the Lightning last night.
Yeah, we thought this was done, when Game 3 was winding down. But no, it was the Lightning with the last, the go-ahead goal in the last minute there. And as you said, holding serve. As I always say, the saying goes, the series isn't over until a team loses at home, and that hasn't happened yet. So here we are, tied 2-2. This has a making of a series going 7, 2 excellent goalies, 2, very good teams. I've been thinking about the Rangers. I think we've been kind of downplaying their eliteness. I mean, elite goalie, elite defenseman, former Norris Trophy winner, and Adam Fox. You got that number 1 center in Zibanejad, who's really taken his game to another level. And look, you got Chris Kreider. I mean, he's pretty. He scores all his goals from right in front of the net, but he scored a bunch of them.
52 is 52.
Yeah, and that's a lot. And Artemi Panarin, I think he's a superstar as well. So Rangers, maybe I should have saw this coming. I had them lose. I forget where didn't have them going this far. But this is really impressive. I think we're going to see this has a making of 7. So Lightning not going away easy. You're going to have to go hard to take down the defending champs, back-to-back champ.
Yeah, exactly. And listen, I don't, well, as I said, it wasn't a complete surprise that, you knew that there was going to be a big pushback from Tampa. I think what was frankly surprising was the fact that they were down 2-0 in the series and down 2-0 on home ice, that it took them for sort of get their backs up against the wall and barge right back into this series. That being said, we've seen this over and over again from this hockey team over the last 3 years, and they truly are the class of the National Hockey League. They are what other teams measure themselves against, and to the Rangers' credit, they've been right in this series. The games have been close for the most part, with the exception of last night, but at least for hockey fans, Reem, I think it's a positive, because we have at least 2 more games this series and maybe 3, because for all the hype and anticipation of the Oilers-Avalanche series, the Oilers were doing postseason media today and cleaning out lockers.
Yeah, and just one note on the Rangers here. They do have some game time decisions coming up for next game, Hedl and Strome. And, I mean, if you're missing 2 of those guys, that would be a big hole in their offense. As far as, speaking of injuries, we got the laundry list here from Edmonton at the end of the, season. Ken Holland talking. Leon Draisaitl, no surprise, high ankle sprain. I think some people are like, what? That's it? You didn't have more than that? I mean, he played incredible high ankle sprain since Game 6 of Round 1. They say he was playing in a lot of pain. RNH, Nuge, and Jesse Puljujarvi played through shoulder injuries, and Kyler Yamamoto in concussion protocol. And Darnell Nurse played through a torn hip flexor in the playoffs, but won't need surgery. So there you have it. There's the Oilers injury report.
Yeah, the 2 big ones was Nurse and Draisaitl. And when your number 1 defenseman and your number 1A player are banged up like that, listen, Nurse was obviously really struggling, and he wasn't the player. He certainly wasn't a $9.25 million defenseman in that. But I mean, it's all hands on deck, and you do have diminished players in the Stanley Cup playoffs. That's somewhat what it's all about. And I think he certainly showed a lot of heart to play through it. But, at that level, against that type of competition, playing in that much intensity, the minutes that a player like that's leaned on, when you're diminished like that, it shows, and it did. Draisaitl, on the other hand, this guy is superhuman. I mean, how many times have we seen guys miss 4, 6, 8 weeks due to high ankle sprains? And I mean, we all remember that. It came back to that play against Mikey Anderson in the Round 1 against the Los Angeles Kings. For Draisaitl not to miss any time, to play the way he did, and then 17 points in 5 games against the Calgary Flames. And he was still incredibly productive in the series against the Avalanche. He basically had 32 points on 1 leg, only 1 point behind the best player in the world, Connor McDavid. I'll say this. We've long talked about Kyle Connor and how underrated he is. If this is possible for a guy that's, scored 50 and won a Hart, I think Leon Draisaitl is right there with the most underrated player, just because of Connor McDavid sucking up so much of that oxygen in the room.
I think that might be fair. The way that he played with a high ankle sprain, looked like he couldn't really move out there, but managed to just rack up assists, great passing, and he's awesome on the side of the net on the power play, jamming in one-timers. The one thing for me that stuck out from this, from the Oilers, postseason, Evander Kane seemed like they liked him and they'd like to bring him back. We'll see. But Ryan Rishaug said on the radio in Edmonton, 1260, that they may be moving on from Jesse Puljujarvi. He's 24. What is he? 24. Year-old RFA. He hasn't really had that sky-high ceiling that you'd like from a player who's drafted that high, but I think he's been productive. He goes to the net, goes in the corner, and I think you could be a player that maybe you could get for cheap and could make an impact It seems like they're prioritizing Yamamoto over him. I don't know why you don't keep both, but it seems like the coaching staff didn't really like Puljujarvi, but your buddy Dustin Nielsen will argue that he's been pretty damn productive for them.
Oh, Dusty is the president of the Jesse Puljujarvi Appreciation Society, and yeah, he was not having many of the takes about Jesse. I mean, still a very young player, a big body, somewhat physical at times, I guess. And a 4th overall draft pick, a guy that we all thought was going to go number 3, and then Columbus jumped up and took Pierre-Luc Dubois, which in retrospect looks like a pretty damn good selection. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with Puljujarvi, whether they look to move on from him and whether he's the sort of a player like a team like the Winnipeg Jets might possibly be interested in. I mean, there is a lot of intrigue for the Jets side of things as to, who's in that bottom 6. Hell, the top 6 too. I mean, when we talk about some of the deals that potentially could be made. But I think as we all agree, whether we're talking about potential guys that might come loose as free agents or available in trade, it does seem like the Winnipeg Jets, still have not made a ton of progress like many other teams in narrowing down their head coaching search. And, it's been widely reported the Jets' number 1 choice, number 2 choice, number 3 choice has been Barry Trotz, and they have been being patient on that. But we heard from Elliot Friedman today earlier on 32 Thoughts, Reem, that it does sound like the Winnipeg Jets are acknowledging the fact that this could not happen. I mean, they still want Barry Trotz to be the guy. He hasn't signed anywhere else, but it does seem like they're looking at the calendar and realizing that they need to get on with some other interviews, some other candidates, if they're not able to get Barry Trotz.
Yeah, I think it's been a month since he was fired. We've been doing this Trotz watch, and I'm pretty thankful that it's gone on because our YouTube views
give it a couple more weeks
have skyrocketed. But I mean,
Barry Trotz moves the needle here in Manitoba.
You look at our top videos last month. Everyone's like Trotz watch. We have Kyle Connor yesterday, and doesn't even compare to any of the Trotz watch videos that we've done. Then all serious, Murad posted that yesterday afternoon as well. It seems like they're looking towards other candidates. He mentioned Jim Montgomery and Elliott saying that today. And I think at a certain point, you got to be like, look, if it hasn't happened yet, we got to come up with plan B. Because what if this doesn't happen? What if he doesn't want to come here? And you see other teams in the running. No one's really made a move. Maybe they're waiting till after the Cup final. But I do have the clip from this morning. Elliot and Jeff Merrick just talking about it, if you want to play that.
Yeah, I'm sure people would like to hear that if they haven't already. This is from the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick, and just a little snippet on the latest on Winnipeg's coaching search.
One of the things that kind of happened here was everything was kind of settling down. Everybody knew who was kind of on Trotz watch, and they were starting to interview other candidates. Like, one of the things I agree with you about is that I think Winnipeg waited a long time. I think they were Trotz only, and I'm just wondering if Winnipeg is beginning to suspect that it may not work out for them, and they started looking at some other candidates. You mentioned Tocchet.
Yeah.
You mentioned Darnielle. We talked about Montgomery, and I do think Montgomery has a shot there, and we'll see where that goes.
All right, so there's just a little clip of Elliot. I'm interested, for those of you with us live in YouTube. Now, I don't really want to spend too much time talking about not getting Barry Trotz, because I'm sure the Winnipeg Jets and most of you are still hoping that is very much a possibility and maybe things happen. But who's the number 2 choice for you fans? Hit us up in the chat. The one name that we haven't heard is Bruce Cassidy. And listen, Cassidy, if he's got plenty of options, I mean, there isn't that draw of coming back home. Certainly I think the Jets would have to do a very good job of convincing Bruce that the talent on this roster, the opportunity is there, is it better in other spots. And I think in that sort of a situation with no relationship, with nothing, the Jets would be, much like they are with players in the free agent market, at a disadvantage. So I know he's a name that many will come up. But Remis, it's interesting, and we hear it from these guys all the time. We'll see what Ken has to say about that. Like, I don't really see outside of Barry Trotz a true clear-cut number one. And obviously, we're not able to be in any of these meetings. We don't get this information, and there's obvious reasons for that. But it will be fascinating to see how this proceeds going forward if, in fact, the Trotz option doesn't materialize in Winnipeg. And I guess the other side of that, and part of the reason why I think they're beginning this process now or have been recently, is that it could take a while to narrow down everybody else that you're less decided on as opposed to Barry. And at the same time, you do want to get things done in the next few weeks to have that coach to be able to start talking to players from last year's roster about next season and presumably have some input on some very significant player moves that could go down in and around the draft in Montreal in early July.
As far as signing free agents,
I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I still can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
There we go. Remis is back.
Now we're good. As far as signing free agents, you heard Paul Stastny to Pierre LeBrun saying he wants to see, where things are going. And if you want to attract free agents, you're going to need a head coach. People want to know who they're going to be working with, who they're going to be playing for. So the draft early July, you can have that in place. A lot of moves being made around then. I did do a poll. I used the rumored names that we've been hearing. Who's your number two? Montgomery, Arneal, Tocchet, someone else at 40% leading. I think Jim Montgomery, who Murat mentioned yesterday, we'll talk to him on Friday, is an interesting name. He was having success in Dallas when it ran into some personal issues, had to leave the team, but he's behind Craig Berube, who's been very highly regarded since he took over St. Louis and led them to a cup final. He does have a small history with the organization, playing for the Moose in 99-2000. I think he would be an interesting candidate. Doesn't move the needle among fans like Barry Trotz, but I think he could be solid. That's who I would pick.
Let's see what the folks have to say. There is quite a few. Phil's my second choice is Bruce Cassidy. Third would be McGregor. Bruce Cassidy, though that probably wouldn't happen. Jay Miller, Claude Julien. We've got another Cassidy. Now, there's some interesting points or Trippy Walnut says Alain Vigneault took two teams that didn't deserve to be great, got them President's trophies and cup finals, just fell short. Schickster, and I'm somewhat Schickster, I'm with you on this. I just want someone who will be able to take charge of the room and establish accountability and play the younger players. And Rob Mahoney says young players buckle under Cassidy, i.e. DeBrusque. Seems like Pomo 3.0. Not sure that will change anything. Ben Lawrence, Tocchet for me, strictly because of his attitude and communication skills. And Pie Boy Cassidy said difficult to be getting along with. Waiters wants to trade Scheifele for Pasternak. I don't think they're trading Mark Scheifele for anybody with 1 year left on a contract. I mean, if somehow you can get him to re-sign long term, go for it. That would be excellent. But I will say I'm not sure that that's happening.
That Pasternak situation, very interesting. Elliot was saying that Pasternak, he's good friends with Torrey Krug and David Krejci, who they didn't bring back. And, he's got, as you said, 1 year left on his deal.
Although, if you saw after the World Championships, Pasta and Krejci were walking through Sweden or Helsinki or wherever they were. Pasta did an Instagram video and said, "Hey, Krejci, are you coming back to Boston next year?" And he did it kind of looked like one of those Tom Brady Gronk videos where he did the smile or whatever. So
he's like
now,
this.
everything's changed now with Cassidy being gone. So who knows? Maybe that does change the situation a little bit to get back. But the David Pasternak name has been thrown out there. He's got 1 year left on a deal that, was very, very productive and worked out very well for the Boston Bruins. And we remember the animosity that it sort of took to get that done. So all those will be topics. So we'll get to those with Ken a little bit later on. Hey, I've got to give a shout out to Mitch Jansen, who is our newest member of the Winnipeg Sports Talk YouTube chat. Mitch, thanks so much. Got a chance, Remo, to meet Mitch in person last night. Got a little bit of a tour of the wild control room at Assiniboia Downs last night in the midst of an absolutely beautiful evening at the track. Everything was perfect with the exception of my selections on the races. Had a few near misses and I kind of did some cash bets early on, saved my internet bets for later. None of them went very well. Maybe I used up all my luck with the wins on Tuesday night. But I will tell you that Mitch and the gang, we saw Stretch and Kurt doing their thing. It was just absolutely glorious to be out at the track last night. The night was absolutely perfect. And the only thing better than the atmosphere around it was that buffet. I got to tell you, that was an all-timer meal. A lot of single guys like myself probably don't treat themselves to anything like that very often. The prime rib. Listen, I can't speak enough about it. Shout out to our great friends, Darren, Sherry, and Sharon out at Assiniboia Downs for the great hospitality. And we will be looking forward to doing a little WST get-together out at the track a little later on this summer. If you're thinking about checking that out for the live racing, there's no live racing tonight, but they are back on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday next week, and that will be the schedule throughout the summer. So we'll pick a great day, maybe a Tuesday or a Wednesday night, get together, have a few cold ones, jump on some great food, and hopefully pick a few winners. But and we missed you at the track last night. Mitch gave us a nice tour, got to see the guys, and as I said, it was a perfect night to be outside at the track enjoying what Assiniboia Downs has for us.
I'll have to get out. Hopefully your night was better than my picks. I'm ice cold to start the year. I was playing hockey last night. My team wanted me to mention how strong I was on defense last game. Only got walked a couple times, leading to breakaways, but it was fun.
Did you guys win?
Out. We did win. We got pumped our last couple of games.
Mixing in a win, attaboy.
Man, I was ready to we played some teams I think that were way better than us, and I was ready to cry on the bench last game. We couldn't touch the puck. It was not a good game. Last game felt much better.
Couple people, by the way, asking about the membership. It's just a great way to support the channel. You'll get noticed in the chat with your microphone and green font. You'll have an opportunity to use some of the special emotes, including the one of me ironically doing the wave. And as Mitch said, for $2 a month, it's 80% off a Twitch sub. So anyways, thanks again to everyone that's supporting the channel, however you're doing it, but especially the members and the people that are with us each and every day. We greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, basically, people were giving us super chats anyways. We wanted to make a fun thing, maybe give you a little icon beside your name. You get a different color microphone for how long you've been a member, and you get the emote. So when Ken comes in the chat later, make sure you're using the water bottle emote in the chat as I put it in. I know everyone loves using the hair one when Brandon comes in too with the hair one.
Yeah, Rowicki will be in tomorrow. And then Marat. We'll have Marat come in on Wednesdays. And by the way, we'll talk about this a little later on, but a very interesting piece in The Athletic on Montgomery and some of the other coaching candidates for the Winnipeg Jets from Marat Atesh. So we'll chop that up with him on Friday. But in the meantime, make sure to head over to The Athletic and check it out. And we'll kind of touch on some of those topics with Ken a little bit later on. That being said, we're going to start it off getting ready for the Bomber home opener. We will have some golf talk with Fienberg towards the end of the program. We'll have an extended segment with Wiebe in the next segment. But first things first, we're going to get to some CFL football. Before we do that, the only thing better than CFL football is maybe getting out on the lake at Aikens Fly-In Fishing Lodge here in Manitoba. There's really nothing like it, both the atmosphere, the fishing, and the people. If you're thinking about a once-in-a-lifetime fishing trip, whether it be with family after the pandemic or maybe some sort of a corporate outing, find out more on a spot at Aikens Lake. There is still some limited availability this season, but you can start planning for next year. Find out more at aikenslake.com or on Twitter. Give our friend Pitt Turen a buzz at Aikens Lake on Twitter. The gang at Wallace & Wallace is everywhere in Winnipeg. You've seen the trucks and fences all around the city. They're Winnipeg's fencing and overhead door specialists, serving this city and province for over 75 years. Whatever sort of fence you need, they got it. Vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they've got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. 452-2700 is the number. One of the experts will come down and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them and find out more at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenniston. The gang at Vita Health Fresh Market features great prices on Winnipeg's best selection of natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries at one of 7 Winnipeg locations. They've been doing this speaking of longtime local businesses, Vita Health's been doing it for over 60 years here in Winnipeg. And not only do you have all those amazing supplements, products, groceries, and more, some great lunch options if you're looking for something healthy on the go. Grab and go Vita Market, salads, soups, sandwiches, and more. Not to mention great barbecue options, including delicious lean bison steaks or chicken. Vita Health Fresh Market. Check them out. 7 Winnipeg locations, including the newest store in Linden Ridge, and online at myvita.ca. And I've seen a lot of folks lately giving some love to our pals over at F Apparel. Of course, F Apparel is Winnipeg's leader in custom suits and clothing for men, with custom suits starting at just $400. I saw John Rush tweeting out how great Andrew and the gang over at F Apparel took care of him. I know Ken can speak to that as well. Bottom line, guys, everyone needs at least one suit that fits and looks great. And F's custom-made suits start at $400. If you're in a wedding party, they'll give you a great deal, 15% off for all the fellas to get suited up, and you'll be able to wear that suit for many other events as opposed to just one wedding. Pop down and see him at 190 Smith Street downtown, or online at FEPHFapparel.com. All right, Ken Wiebe coming up. We'll get his thoughts on the Jets coaching search, and of course, find out how it was in Denver and Edmonton for the conference finals that ended all too quickly for most sports fans. But first things first, let's get ready for Friday night IG Field, Bombers Red Black CFL kickoff here for the 2-time Grey Cup champs. And it's a pleasure to welcome in the new voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on CJOB 680, Derek Taylor, to Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks so much for doing this. And welcome back to the Peg. I mean, we talked when you first got the gig, but it's been great to hear you on the Superstation. And I'm sure you're about as excited for Friday as most of the fans are.
Oh, it's going to be great, right? It's just everything about it. The preseason is nice. It gives you a chance to charge up, but now you get to focus and drill down on who are the 45, 46 guys that are going to be playing. And, oh, look at this. Paul Appolise and Darvin Adams are back. Just add a little extra spice to it for the first time since Lapo left after the 2019 season. So, yeah, Friday's going to be just enormous.
Listen, I want to talk about the game, obviously, and get your insights on the league overall going in. But let's first talk about the gig. I mean, how's the transition been? You're here. Listen, from my personal standpoint, I'm looking at where you're at right now. You've moved into a game room, which I could certainly do. I know that there's some life things, new house and whatnot, that'll take place very soon. But how's the transition been? Moving from one rival to their arch rival, and of course, coming back to Winnipeg, where you spent so much time before.
It hasn't been bad, to tell you the truth. The fans in Saskatchewan, some of them, a couple are angry, but I think a lot of people just kind of recognize that, hey, he loved the Riders while he was here. He gave us, you're just the conduit to the team that they love, right, is kind of how I perceive it. So as long as I give folks the information on the team they love, they're going to like me, love me, or just at least tolerate me. So, Hustler, sometimes you just want to be tolerated. Just listen and tolerate. That's all we ask for. So it's been good in that respect. To some folks, you have to prove your bona fides. You have to say, well, I was on the field when that guy jumped out of the crowd and tried to beat up one of the BC Lions. You have to prove or Doug Brown was once super mad at me for asking him a question or stuff like that. You have to prove some bona fides to some people. But ultimately, as long as you love the sport that they love, I think that's going to be good enough for listeners. I certainly hope it is, because, man, do I love the CFL.
Well, everybody knows that. I mean, listen, not only were you the voice of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, but before that spent so much time really with some of the most innovative coverage for the Canadian Football League that we've had in a long, long time. And I think, you actually do deserve a lot of credit for the way this game is being covered by a number of people in the industry. And you've taken that to the play-by-play gig. And, you've always had a unique voice in it. And I think fans have loved that. And that's been a big part of why you've been successful. But you are coming here to Winnipeg. And we knew when we first spoke, this would be probably a seamless transition, going to a legacy station here that is synonymous with Blue Bomber football, following in the footsteps of an incredible Hall of Famer that raised the bar quite high. But at the end of the day, this community, the football community. You've got a great connection with the Bisons beforehand. And listen, from calling in the visitor booth, you know a lot about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers too. So as far as getting back in the booth and doing it, it's just basically been seamless, a few different surroundings, but pretty much the same thing that you love to do.
Yeah, pretty much. Like Doug Brown, who I work with, is obviously very experienced, right? He's been doing this for a decade, so he's got it locked. Ed Tate, who's with us on the pregame show, Ed's been around the CFL for 30 years and been working for the Bombers since I think it's 2016. So those are guys that you can rely on if, while I've been watching the whole league, in depth since 2015, if I missed something that was critically important to the Bombers that I'll learn at a later date, these guys can fill that in. Oh, hey, remember that one moment in 2019 when those guys are critically important for that. So it's been good. And ultimately, yeah, like you get used to a new partner who's got rhythms, and you want to make sure that you're providing them what they need so they can give the listeners what they need. Because if I am not good, Doug can't be as good. And you lift Doug up, and then it lifts us all up as we go. And Christian Amell on the sideline providing his content, and Greg Mackling and all the gang, Ted Wyman of the Winnipeg Sun. If we're all doing well and working hard to support each other, we're all going to sound great, and that's ultimately the goal.
DT, I want to get into the team and the league, but quickly fill our listeners and viewers in on when they can find out your content. Obviously, you'll be doing the coaches show. You've got expanded pre and post game coverage as well as the week. I mean, when can people hear your Bomber coverage on CJOB?
All right, weekly coaches show 7 to 8 on CJOB. On days where on Monday, on days where there is a Monday game like July 4th, we'll have it on the Tuesday at that same hour. Daily Coaches Show is at 4:15 on the news. Richard Kluche and Julie Buckingham. Gosh, you can get me at DT on OB on Twitter. I'll be pumping out content there. I've got some really cool ideas of what we can do there. And then 2 hours before every kickoff, you listen to us on CJOB or online at cjob.com and get all your great information leading up to all 18 plus one playoff game because they'll host the West Final and then the Grey Cup. So, yeah, 20 more Bomber games this coming season.
That's what I'm talking about. Derek Taylor, voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on CJOB with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. The home opener against Ottawa is Friday night. And we're going to see a similar team, many of the same faces on this Blue Bomber club. But as with professional sports, there's always turnover. What stood out from the preseason for you, DT? I mean, I know there was a lot of new things for the job itself, but just as far as the team goes, this Winnipeg football team very well. Many similar faces, but were there a few guys that kind of stood out? And did anyone really surprise you in grabbing a job once the final cuts were made?
Well, I think maybe the big surprise from Bomber camp is Dalton Schoen. You'll see him number 83 when the game kicks off on Friday. We saw him in the preseason as well. Schoen came in and, he was with the number 2s at rookie camp, and he was with the number 2s as a receiver at training camp, and just slowly but surely worked his way up through doing things that coaches liked. When Greg Ellingson needed some time off to deal with a minor injury, there went Dalton Schoen into Ellingson's position at slot back. And then the final day of camp, Ellingson was back and Schoen stayed with the number 1s in place of Janarian Grant. And you think of that and you go, well, Janarian's a guy who has been with the team for a while. Coaches know what he's all about. And yet they put Schoen into the number 1s. It honestly tells you a lot about the work that he has done and what the coaches must think of him. So when Friday kicks off, I fully expect to see Rasheed Bailey, Dalton Schoen, Nick Debsky, Greg Ellingson, Drew Wolotarski being the starting lineup. They're trying to replace 7 bodies, right? There are some that were elite, but there weren't ones at critical positions, superstar critical positions that they need to replace like some other teams do. Drew Desjardins, a guard, Darvin Adams, Kenny Lawler, forgive me, a superstar at a critical position, but they put in Greg Ellingson. Andrew Harris, but I think you and I have talked about where I am with running backs, and running backs to me are more about the offensive line and the scheme that they're asked to play in. Steven Richardson, well, Casey Sales has already been here for a year. DeAndre Alford's gone, but Winston Rose had been back, and they get veteran Tyquan Glass in to be that field side cornerback. So unlike some other teams that had their stars move on to other teams, whether by choice or the player decided to go, the Bombers don't have that, right? Big Hill, Jefferson, Jeff Coate, Stanley Bryant, Jamarcus Hardrick, Zach Collaros, all those guys are back. And to me, that puts the Bombers absolutely in the catbird seat. Honestly, a fair bit above every other team in the league.
How would you describe Schoen? And did he sort of make the most of the opportunity when Jalen Saunders was sent packing to take advantage of that spot that maybe was earmarked for a former established CFLer?
Well, Saunders never really got above the second team in practice. As we kind of watched him, he got into the first team for a very little bit, but he never really made the impact. And yet there was shown every day. Coaches talk about him running. One of the big things for them isn't necessarily how fast you are, how athletic you are. Coaches like to, when they talk to us, say, we're focused on, are you in the right spot at the right time? And that's what they give Schoen a ton of credit for. Obviously, if you're getting to a CFL camp with the back-to-back Grey Cup champions, you have the requisite level of athleticism and hands and everything else. But being in the right spot at the right time, knowing the playbook, oh, you went from the field side slot back to the boundary side slot back. Now you need to know different parts of the play. Can you do that? And Schoen has been able to do all that. He had, I think he caught every single one of his targets in the preseason games as well. So it won't pop. If you remember when Brandon Zylstra popped off the screen for the Edmonton Elks back in, 16, 17, it's not that level of this guy's destined to be in the NFL, but he might be really good in a couple of years, right? And he'll get a chance to show it, I think, on Friday.
As far as the backfield goes, you mentioned Andrew Harris. We all know what he meant to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and he'll be expected to be leaned on big time with the Toronto Argonauts in his new home. Brady Oliveira and Johnny Augustine, the two next ones, both with Canadian passports. How do you see this working? I mean, do you think that there'll be a relatively, will it be a 60-40 split, a 70-30, or do they start with one guy, give it to him consistently and repeatedly, and one guy is more a true backup to the other?
I think more the one guy and then the other guy will be more or less a true backup to the other. I feel like that's what most teams would want to do. They bring different skill sets, right? Oliveira is bigger. Meanwhile, Johnny Augustine is smaller and faster. Like Augustine is just lightning quick. All throughout camp, we've seen Oliveira as the number one. And so there's no reason for me to think that anything's going to be different come Friday. It feels like they would like Oliveira to take the reins and be the number one back. But there's so many of us, myself included. First time I interviewed Johnny Augustine in training camp, I said, please consider this my official application for vice president of the Johnny Augustine fan club. Because that cat, of any back currently in the CFL, any back continuing in the CFL, the highest yards per carry rate of any running back.
He's so productive.
Yards.
Every time you give him the football, he makes something happen.
Right, and so much of that for me is just, what do you do when the hole is there? If the hole is not there, everybody's pooched. Even the best running back, John Cornish in his prime, if there wasn't a hole, he was done. But man, what you saw in some of those preseason snaps was line opens up a massive hole and Augustine boop is through it and has 15 yards before you blink. You go, that is something to harness, and that's the strength of this offensive line. When you look at run blocking numbers, there's adjusted line yards, the stat I co-opted from Football Outsiders and just brought to the CFL. Winnipeg's the best run blocking line in the CFL, narrowly ahead of Montreal last season. You open those holes, guys get through it fast. It's going to work great, honestly, no matter who it is. Neither guy brings the entire package that Andrew Harris did, the consistent check down guy, and the Andrew Harris, I don't know it as well as coaches, but I don't remember backs better than Andrew Harris in pass protection. Oh, the guy's now coming from the far side. I'll go get him. Boom. We're fine. Zach can get the ball off. I don't remember a back better than Andrew Harris. These guys will have to pick up that role as well. But as far as running the football, I'm a huge Johnny Augustine guy, and honestly, I'm not alone. So I think a lot of us are curious to see when will Johnny get a shot.
You beat me to the next question, DT, and that's a sign of a great answer. But I was going to ask you about the pass protection. Was wondering, does Brady Oliveira have an advantage in that area of the game, and is that why he might have maybe a little bit of a leg up, especially in the regular package? Because the bottom line is everyone else can play well. If something happens to Zach Collaros, we got serious problems here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and that'll be a key factor. I'm sure that is a key factor for coaches, right? Like we talked about with Dalton Schoen, are you in the right place at the right time for a back? When you're needed, when you see that, okay, well, they showed 4, but actually 2 more are creeping up, and now I got to go get one of the guys on the edge. Do you get the right guy? Because, the quarterback is the thing in professional football. It's one of the things that coaches won't explicitly tell us certain stuff in the media. It's one of the things I just kind of assume, though I can't prove, and I don't necessarily have the knowledge to show it, that maybe that's where Oliveira gets the consistent advantage over Johnny Augustine. Again, I don't have anything to back that up, but there's got to be some reason why coaches look at Oliveira and then they look at Johnny Augustine, again, 6.8 yards per carry for his career, and go, it's Brady. There's got to be several things. So that's one thing that we'll be looking for, who's got late blitzers and how are they picked up, and is it just a function of size? Like, so much of blocking, they'll tell us, is guys want to. You got to step up in the hole and get the blitzing Avery Williams on Friday. But how much of it is 190 pounds versus 220 pounds in a running back body?
Yeah, and by the way, folks, our DraftKings contest is open. We're over 40 people, so if you want to get in, and listen, DT, we live in sort of a fantasy football world, and we'll talk about touches, we'll talk about touchdowns, yards. The one thing that's not as sexy, that doesn't get talked about very much, is picking up a key block and allowing your quarterback to throw for it, and certainly that'll be a big part of it. Speaking of the quarterbacks, we know Zach is the man. What did you see from the guys competing to be the backup in training camp? What do you make of the depth chart? And, if the Bombers do have to go to their number 2, where's the confidence level?
I think this applies to a few teams. I think if they have to go to their number 2, let's go trade for Trevor Harris. Like, Trevor Harris is the one piece that's kind of sitting out there in the CFL right now. He's in Montreal, and he's the backup to Vernon Adams Jr. And to me, he's a guy that if you lost your starting quarterback, to avoid an absolute disaster, this would apply to, Hamilton. This would apply to probably, wouldn't it be weird to see him back in Ottawa? But to me, in Winnipeg, if you lost Zach Collaros, the drop from Zach to any quarterback is going to be big. But to Drew Brown and to Dakota Prukop, both guys have had some flashes in preseason, Brown and Prukop. Both guys I wonder about over the course of the season, just because we haven't seen it. I was talking to Dakota in camp, and I said, it feels like you're at the same spot Cody Fajardo was in 2019. You've been in the league a while. You're tremendous at running the football and in the quarterback sneak game and things like that, but we're not sure what you would look like for a full season as a passer. For Fajardo, obviously, it worked out fantastically in 2019. There's no reason that couldn't be Dakota Prukop's future, but there's no guarantee that, this thing will happen twice in a 4-year span, right? So I feel like if it's me and I'm the GM of the Bombers and Zach Collaros goes down, I start looking at options, because this is a team that is primed to win, and the quarterback's the most important position. And I just kind of need somebody who is, honestly, 2018 Matt Nicholas could probably be a Grey Cup favorite with this roster versus where the rest of the CFL is and the questions that exist in the rest of the CFL. So I think Trevor Harris becomes an interesting pivot point in the CFL this year, and in the disaster scenario, maybe for the Bombers too.
Is Prukop the guy that'll be vulturing all the touchdowns of Winnipeg starting running backs and going for double digits on the 1 yard line?
Vernon Adams is, of course, the ultimate vulture in the CFL for fantasy fans. Dakota Prukop will be one to watch. I'm curious to see how they will do short yardage situations, how much they'll just leave Zach in, because Zach is absolutely fine in those scenarios. But yeah, Dakota Prukop would be the if you're playing in the DraftKings league, he would be the vulture that you worry about.
Derek Taylor, voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on OB, is with us. Kicking game's always been a big topic, certainly for the last couple of years. Looks like Mark Leggio is going to be the guy, both kicking and punting. What did you see over the course of training camp, the preseason? And I would imagine, certainly from where I'm standing, this is TBA going forward. See how it goes. But how did he win the job?
Yeah, Leggio. Honestly, Leggio, I have a fair bit of confidence in him. When you adjust punting for field position and stuff like that, Leggio was slightly above average last season, which is good. There weren't a lot of punters above average, and then Cody Grace in Calgary and Richie Leone in Ottawa were just miles better than everybody else. But Mark Leggio was an above average punter, so that's a good start. His kickoffs in the preseason, they were good. His field goals, I'll keep trumpeting the stat till we get more information. He was 5-8 of converts. You can't be that way. That cost your team a couple of points on average. He was 5 of 8 on field goals too, but his average field goal distance attempted last year was 45 yards. For kickers like Rene Paredes and Boris Bidet, their average field goal attempt was 35 yards. So Leggio, his average kick was asked to be 10 yards longer, which I go, okay, that's a lot, because that's not asked of any kicker, over the course of a season. So he's going to get the smaller opportunities and make those, and we'll all forget about, the fact that he missed 3 kicks of 40 plus, whatever it was. But two, like his numbers in college, if you translated them to a CFL rate, he looked really good. Like he has everything you need in a kicker. Maybe no more whatever that attempted sneak was in the West Final. Maybe no more of that. But Leggio kind of has everything that you need, and I feel like, don't look at the fact that he was 68% on his field goals in 2021, because there's a lot that was asked of him and a lot that goes into that number. He looks really good. Coach O'Shea talks about, consistency and fixing anything along the way. He says he likes what Leggio and Ali Mortada have done, so he's got confidence in them. We'll see how. I mean, there's no reason to think that Leggio can't be a really good kicker in this league, because he's got the college track record. He just, in my mind, a few more attempts, and if we see him hit if he gets a few 27-yarders, we're all going to forget about the fact that he was 5 of 8 in 2021.
DT, let's move on to the other side of the football. A couple significant departures in DeAndre Alford and Stowe Richardson, among others, from the defense, but the key core is back. But a big injury to Mercy Maston over the course of the preseason. How's the defense shaping up for the Ottawa Redblacks on Friday night?
Well, you've got the two Terminators on the outside, right? Jackson Jeffcoat and Willie Jefferson. So that's a great place to start. Jeffcoat, as the injury report says, been dealing with an ankle injury. Hasn't practiced a ton, but I feel like he's one of those guys you probably need to cut his foot off to keep him from playing. So no reason to expect that's a problem. Adam Bighill in the middle, Kyrie Wilson, like their front six is going to be good. You replace Steven Richardson with Casey Sales. Sales is a guy who performed and would get pressure when he was in that unit when Richardson was not. So while he may not be Stove, Casey Sales showed really well. The back six, okay, you lose DeAndre Alford, but you replace him with a 4-year veteran in Taekwon Glass at that field side cornerback spot. And, it didn't go particularly well for Glass in Montreal last season, but that's a guy with experience and, again, knows where to be and knows how to play. He and Nick Taylor seem to work well together. I feel like that's going to be absolutely fine, because your lockdown side of Winston Rose and Dietrich Nichols looks perfect. Nichols had a rep yesterday where this is kind of the stuff that we learn as football fans, but Ellingson was running a corner route against him, and Nichols kind of went, oh, this is going to be a corner route. So he didn't follow Ellingson. He just went, okay, I know where the ball is going, and I'm going to get there. And he got there, and he broke it up, and I thought, well, that's super smart that you ran to where one, that you knew where the ball was going to be, and two, that you just ran there and didn't follow the receiver. You're like, well, that's smart. I like that from a second-year player. I love it. So the back six, Don Rutledge, who says, call me Rut, is the guy to watch, right? He's the one filling in for Mercy Maston, who, essentially is filling in for Alden Darby, right, who was the Sam last year. Rutledge is a good-sized guy, 6'2", probably goes about 210, 215, so not Derek Moncrief size, but bigger than most Sam linebackers in the league. And like he said, I've played a lot of positions. I played, halfback, and I've played corner, and I played Mike linebacker in this, and he's been jumping into drills in different spots wherever he's asked. He looks like a guy who's excited to be here. We'll see how it goes when an offense is really trying to kill you. But when you look at it on the whole, when Brandon Alexander is back, currently that'll be Malcolm Thompson, I think, for Friday's game. When Brandon Alexander is back, as far as back sixes go in the CFL, that's probably in the top 3 with teams like Hamilton and BC. So I think it's going to be just fine, despite the fact you lose a guy to the NFL.
All right, DT, pregame show Friday, 5:30 p.m. before the 7:30 kickoff. Make sure to get there early and be in your seat for the another Grey Cup banner raising. 3 quick hits on the CFL because you follow this league and cover it as closely as anybody. The Bombers are the Grey Cup favorite on the betting odds. The Saskatchewan Riders are number 2. Should they be? Are they the biggest threat to the Bombers? 3P.
No, they're not. No.
Who is?
Lost players. Ottawa. Just saying it. Ottawa/Calgary. If Bo Levi Mitchell is right, Calgary's going to be a problem in the West Division. But Ottawa and a healthy Calgary.
Okay, well, this is a perfect segue into the next one. Speaking of odds boards, I've never seen this before. In the East right now, if you look at win totals for all 4 teams, they're between 8.5 and 9.5, which tells us that there is parity, at least perceived parity, unlike any time we've seen before. Who wins the East? And I guess part of it was how much better is Ottawa going to be? It sounds like you think a lot better.
Ottawa added so much talent to an established coaching staff. I think Ottawa wins the East and, jump on it because you can still get it at a real good price. I think Montreal is really going to struggle this season. So to me, Ottawa, Hamilton, Toronto. Toronto was 7-1 in 1-score games last year. So though I like their roster, they're going to, in my mind, regress a little bit because 1-score wins tend to regress the following season. Ottawa, Hamilton, Toronto, Montreal in the East. And Montreal, I don't think they push Edmonton for the worst team in the league, but Montreal, it's going to be a struggle for them.
Well, you mentioned Edmonton. John Hodge and I were kicking this around yesterday. I mean, to me, the most intriguing teams this year, and I guess probably we should put Ottawa in, but I'm thinking of the BC Lions and the Elks, the BC Canadian quarterback situation, and of course, everything that comes with Chris Jones. What do you make of BC and Edmonton going in? And is there a team that interests you more than the other based on the uncertainties going into week 1?
If Nathan Rourke plays at a Matt Nichols 2018 level, BC is going to be a problem too. I was just looking before I came on with you. That back 6 and that front 6 on defense, oh my gosh. And then, oh, by the way, Lucky Whitehead, Brian Burnham, Dominic Rhymes, Javon Catoy, BC could, if they get just not even like average quarterbacking, but 7th best quarterback in the CFL, BC has a roster that's ready to go, and I think a coach that can take them there. Edmonton, I just don't think they have man for man the players that the rest of the league has. To me, that's the 5th best roster in the East, or pardon me, in the West. And you saw it with Chris Jones, his first year in Saskatchewan, 5 wins, but planted the seeds for what was a real nice increase the following season. To me, that's this year. And then, oh, by the way, figure out your quarterback and just know that it should be Nick Arbuckle based on what we saw in the preseason. You got to go with Arbuckle. But Edmonton, I think, finishes last and gets the first overall pick in the draft.
Derek, thanks so much for doing this. People are fired up for the season. Can't wait to hear you and your new home on the 680 CGOB, the home of the Bombers. We'll look forward to the pregame coverage on Friday. And then, of course, your first call, hopefully one of a very, I'm not sure if you'll be able to get to Bob's longevity, but here's to game 1 of a very long, illustrious time here calling the best team in the Canadian Football League.
I love it. Thanks, brother. Grey Cup preview on Friday with Winnipeg and Ottawa. I love this.
Let's do it. Thanks so much, DT. Have a great call on Friday.
Thanks, buddy.
All right, great stuff with DT. Lots of CFL talk coming up over the next few days. Game day, AJ Jakubek, voice of the Ottawa Redblacks, will join us on the Visitors. Hoping to have an Eddie Tate pop by for a little game day visit as well. And tomorrow, Darren Bombing the day before the game. And by the way, speaking of DB, for those of you with us on YouTube today, stick around at the end of the show. We'll shoot you over like we've done to Kenny and Rennie a number of times because DB and Chris Walby will be doing their Game Day Winnipeg show coming up after our program. Thought it was today. Is that tomorrow, Reem?
Yeah, Darren told me it was tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Well, regardless, when they're on Bonfire Sports on YouTube, but they're going to do, kind of figured out 3 o'clock's a good time. We've got a lot of people here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. We'll shoot them over there. So we'll look forward to Bombing and Walby getting after it, and we'll send you there right after Winnipeg Sports Talk here via, simple, a magic press of the button by one Michael Remis. Of course, Princess Auto ready to welcome all Bomber fans for the big tailgate beforehand outside of IG Field. Princess Auto, proud sponsor of the Bombers, and the place where you'll find the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Check them out on Panet Road and Portage Avenue West, or shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. Well, you know Ken's in the house. Hydration, both in the chat and with our guest. And all of us. And hey, listen, Culligan Water are experts in the water game for 65 years as a locally family-owned business. They've got you covered for whatever you need. Water softeners, filters, bottled water coolers, whole home systems, and drinking water systems. Not to mention citywide water delivery services and commercial and industrial water products and solutions. Whether it's for the home, the cottage, or the office, Culligan has you covered. 1200 Sargent Avenue, and you can find out more online at drinkculligan.com. Hey, you're probably needing a little bit of extra Bomber gear to kick off the new season. Pop down and see our pals over at Royal Sports. They've got the new third jersey with the 2 stripes for the Grey Cups. They've got some exclusive back-to-back Grey Cup champion hats that you won't find anywhere else, and an incredible selection of Bomber merchandise, not to mention Winnipeg Jets, NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball, tons of Jets gear, and a huge growing soccer section, including all the Canadian merchandise that they can get. That's another story entirely, as we've learned this week, on how CSA is handling merch and all the things that can bring in revenue. Bottom line is, though, Royal Sports is your merch headquarters, not to mention your hockey superstore, soccer, softball, baseball, bikes, fitness, disc golf, tennis, and more. Whatever you need when it comes to on or off the court, Royal Sports is there. 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for the latest merchandise drops and sales information. And hey, speaking of Bomber supporters, I know Donnie and the gang at Manitoba Battery are ready to go. They always have some funny TikToks on their account. You know, maybe disparaging Bomber opponents. You know, they'll be ready to go. And of course, they're ready to go for summer. Expanded hours right now till 8 p.m. so you can make the most of the week with what you need to do and get after it, enjoying yourself on the weekend. Whether you're working on a hot rod, you've got a boat, a Sea-Doo, batteries for literally everything at Manitoba Battery. And the best part about it is you'll save time and you'll save money big time, as opposed to Canadian Tire or the big box stores. Pop down and see them over on Logan Avenue, 1026. You can give them a call at 783-8787 to arrange a pickup, and you can find out more on everything they've got for you over at manitobabattery.com. All right, let's get Weber in here a little earlier this week, because guess what? He's golfing on Friday. Go figure. Hey, welcome back. What's going on? How are you? Ken just freeze out?
Yeah.
No, we're good. Sorry about that. No, you're good. You're good.
Oh, there we are. Ken's
Sorry
back.
about that. Yes. Huss, great to see you. Great to be with you. Yes, there hasn't been a lot of golfing happening, and I do regret to inform you that I will not be part of the garage sale raid on Saturday with you and the Hammer, but I do look forward to maybe, definitely making that something that we put on the agenda at some point this summer.
I'll pick you up some sort of mug for 25 cents at someone's back lane.
Huss, I want to get the old school typewriter for my office. That's one of the things that I've had Hammer on the lookout for me a few times, but we have not been able to find one yet. But certainly look forward to getting one at some point.
Now, what exactly would you use that typewriter for? Would it be decorative, or would yes. When you do your personal correspondences to friends, you're going back to old school? No, I'm not into email anymore. I'm typing you a letter. I will correspond to you in a week, depending on what Canada Post can do.
I'm more of a handwritten letter type of guy, but definitely it would be for show. Like, Reynolds has the great backdrop with the Hockey Night in Canada blue blazer, so I gotta stake with my roots and get the old Underwood out there in the backdrop.
No doubt. How was the conference finals? I mean, listen, I think for probably the people covering it, certainly for fans, it didn't go as long as we wanted. What was your experience both in Denver and in Edmonton, Kenny?
Yeah, Huss, I got to be honest. I've been humming Small Things pretty much daily since being inside Ball Arena. Not going to bust it out for karaoke anytime soon, but it's a pretty catchy tune that the folks at Ball Arena got into after Game 2.
Was that the first time you'd heard that song?
First time live, Huss. I mean, first time from the fans. And
you were familiar with it before. That didn't completely escape you.
No, that's kind of right in my era for sure. But no, great atmosphere there at Ball Arena for sure. And honestly, the first minute of Game 3 in Edmonton was absolutely off the charts. Connor McDavid shot out of a cannon. I think Dave Poulin kind of captured the wording that all of us in attendance were using as well. And then the series kind of turned around on the Evander Kane push from behind that resulted in the 5-minute major and the subsequent 1-game suspension. I mean, McDavid had one shift basically, or 2 shifts in the 9 minutes or 10 minutes that followed because of the major penalty. And then they took a minor right after that. So they basically had McDavid feeling as good as he had all playoffs and then sitting on the bench basically for the majority of that time. And it really sucked the life out of the building. McDavid wasn't really as dangerous for the remainder of the game. But obviously Draisaitl and McDavid were outstanding in Game 4. But they weren't quite as good as the other guy on the back end of the Avalanche, who was off the charts with 5 points and 9 points in the series for Cale Makar. Just an absolute magician on the back end. Man, oh man, was he ever fun to watch, Huss. And it was a really fun series. It reminded me a little, maybe not quite as much of the Jets-Oilers, but the series was closer than a sweep would suggest. But there was no question who the better team was. So that was probably the difference. I mean, being around Edmonton, all the Oilers people were saying, oh, well, the Oilers could easily sweep that series, let alone get swept. This time there was no doubt as to who the better team was, but the Avalanche certainly had a little bit more depth, but the Oilers took an important step forward.
For me, I think the turning point was the offside call or the lack thereof. I mean, if that is not allowed, it's 2-2 going into the intermission. Instead, it's 3-2, and then they score on the power play to, get, a 2-goal lead, which then, of course, built throughout it. I mean, to me, I know there was a lot of hockey still left to be played, but, considering the challenge of going in, winning one in Denver, the way they started and came back in that game, to me, that certainly would be right up there with the most pivotal moments in the series from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, totally fair, Huss. I know we talked about that last week, and it certainly was an important part of the game, but I still, in real time, I want that called offside. I don't think that anyone with the naked eye saw so much so that the line, by definition and letter of the law, the linesman made the right call, but in real time, that looked like a call that should have been made offside personally, but the Oilers battled, but us, Leon playing on one leg, high ankle sprain was officially revealed today. This guy played, his pain threshold was off the charts. The fact that he had 4 primary assists in that elimination game, despite having to basically leave the ice on several occasions, was incredibly impressive. But man, Huss, we've talked about it all year long. The Avalanche are the gold standard in the Central Division and in the Western Conference. Man, do they have a deep team. They did not look like a team that was playing without their, let's say, for point of argument, third best defenseman in Samuel Girard, let's say top 3 forward in Nazem Kadri, and their starting goalie, yet they still found a way to sweep the series. To me, that was pretty impressive. They played with Kadri for almost 2 full games. Kemper left in Game 1, leaving the net to Pavel Francouz. And Girard's been gone since Game 3 of the St. Louis series, and all they've done, by the way, we'll just shuttle in Bo Byram, a top 5 pick, to eat up the minutes. And they didn't miss a beat despite missing such a key cog. So the Avalanche are very deep. And that's what were we talking about last week? Mikko Rantanen hadn't really gotten going in the last first 2 rounds. He's got a goal in every game in round 3 when his team needs him most. And he moved to center when they needed him to after Kadri left the lineup. So JT Compher had an excellent series. Andrew Kopp's former teammate, he was excellent. But this is a very good team. This is a very good hockey team. You and I have talked about Devon Taves and what a steal it was for the Colorado Avalanche to pick him up. It was interesting. Noticed on Twitter, I think it was Jay Fresh, but I'm not 100% sure, mentioning that Declan Chisholm could project to be a Devon Taves type of player. So that was an interesting thing to read during the course of this series, something I thought might catch the attention of Jets fans. But boy, oh boy, that pairing, show me a better pairing than those 2 guys, Huss. I'm all ears, but I'm not certain that there's a better pairing in the National Hockey League than Cale Makar and Devon Taves. And having watched them live the last 4 games, I'm pretty sure I would take that side of the argument. I don't think there is a better pairing in the NHL right now.
Let me ask you this, because everyone's talking about Cale Makar, and, with them playing in the West and, sometimes some later games, I think a lot of fans don't get a chance to see the Avalanche. They're certainly not on national TV here in Canada all the time. Cale Makar, over the course of the next 5 years, someone was having this conversation yesterday. I regret I can't remember where it was. Regardless, does Cale Makar win a Hart Trophy in the next 5 years?
It's my colleague Elliot Friedman has been banging on that Cale Makar drum the last couple of days here, and it's hard to argue with him. Obviously, we know the importance of Nathan MacKinnon to that team. He is the driver up front, but boy, oh boy, Makar, just an absolute beast on the back end. 5 goals, 22 points. And Huss, here's the crazy part. I think he's 5th in scoring. They've had 2 sweeps so far. It's tough to rack up points when you're sweeping your competition. I think the answer would be the short answer would be yes, Huss, just because of how impactful he is on all areas. I mean, we often talk in the Norris, and some people get rattled that, oh, it's just the best offensive player that wins the Norris. Well, no, I mean, you got to be able to defend. I mean, we talked about it last week too. The ability for Cale Makar to stay with Connor McDavid, I think it was in game 1, where it looked like he was going to be the roadrunner and blow past him, and he reaches around with one hand, poke checks the puck cleanly, but he was still even with him. McDavid blows by, I would say, 99.9% of all other defensemen in the National Hockey League. Makar plays him straight up and then poke checks him and doesn't take a tripping minor or anything of the sort. That was just absolutely extraordinary what he was able to do on the back end. And then look at his offense. I mean, here we talk about this all the time. Oh, well, the Jets need somebody to pound the puck from the top on the power play. Look at Cale Makar's opening goal. Wrist shot from the top of the point. But he scores it because Gabe Landeskog is the lunar eclipse, essentially. There's no chance Mike Smith saw it. They got traffic. He got the puck through quickly. And boy, oh boy, the things that he does in terms of his zone exits and puck moving ability, joining the rush on the second wave, it's tough to argue. He's one of the best players in the NHL. There's no doubt about it. And he's only getting better. That's the scary part.
You know who's not one of the best players in the NHL? Mike Smith. And I guess you can say, oh yeah, that was all the screen. I'm not sure whether I'll go that far. I mean, it looked like he just sort of waved at it and missed it, but
he didn't see it, Huss. He didn't see it.
He didn't see a lot of things so far over the course of the playoffs. I mean, it's sort of amazing that the Oilers were able to get to the conference finals, especially in the Calgary series, right, when he was giving up a bad one each and every game. Now, I know Ken Holland talked about it, and we won't spend much time on the Oilers, but one of the most puzzling things that happened last year in the offseason was that they were not able to improve that goaltending position. And despite all the gains that they made as a team with their players, with the coaching staff, that still has to be a massive, massive check mark on the to-do list for Ken Holland this year, is to support Mike Smith and to get a guy that can come in and truly be a number one, because I don't think Mike Smith is that guy.
That's the thing that we've forgotten already. Mike Smith was like almost a .930 goaltender last year in the Canadian division. I know it was a smaller, grouping of teams, but Mike was he was on the periphery of the Vezina Trophy candidacy a year prior. So I know where you're coming from, and Game 3 is a great example. It was the full Mike Smith experience.
Yep.
I mean, 9 saves on the 5-minute major. Some of them he had no business making whatsoever. And then you got the visit from the Muffin Man when JT Compher slips one through the 5-hole, right? I mean, the place just absolutely was shocked, right? I mean,
who got mentioned yesterday in this? That was a vintage Andre Pavlik-esque performance. I mean, it's Pav. Brilliant save. And then how the hell did that thing go in?
Hey, JT Compher didn't even raise his arms because he didn't know where the puck was. That was the beauty of the situation. And then they're like, oh yeah, right on. It's the potential game winner. Huss, I mean, there's lots of talk, at the local watering hole after Game 4, perhaps about Ville Husso. He's a guy that has been linked to the Oilers in the past. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. All you have to do is pay cash for him. You don't have to trade an asset to get him. And even too, at the exit meetings yesterday, Mike Smith still hadn't decided if he's even going to play next year. So that's a question mark for the Oilers. But they're high on Stuart Skinner. But I don't think they're ready to give Stuart Skinner the net as the number one guy. So Husso is a guy that makes a lot of sense, but it depends on the price tag, right? I mean, Husso was great this year, but then he lost his job to Jordan Binnington before he got hurt again against the Avalanche. So I think they will definitely address it, Huss. But here's the thing. If the Oilers want to keep Evander Kane, it's going to cost them probably north of $6 million. So are you going to be able to get a $5 million goalie if you got to pay 7 or 8 to Evander Kane? I mean, they probably have to move Tyson Barrie on the back end. You have Broberg ready to come in. You got Evan Bouchard is already, even in game 4, was used on the top power play unit for the first period or 2 periods, I think, or period and a half. So here's a team that needs to clear out money just to keep Evander Kane, who had 13 playoff goals and was such a great fit. So it's an interesting time for Ken Holland and the Oilers. And Huss, being in the building, you can't help but compare to 2018. The Oilers have this huge breakthrough, but much like Jets fans, the Jets thought that it was going to be, automatic back to the Western Conference Final and then probably get to the final. And they've won 1 playoff series since. I mean, is that what's going to happen in Edmonton? Or can they find the magic formula to keep the streak going and take another step forward?
Yeah, well, I mean, if they implode internally, they won't be back. But listen, I mean, they've got enough talent there. I mean, and as long as 29 and 97 are there and somewhat healthy, I mean, the performance of Draisaitl still blows my mind. I mean, I know we talk a lot about McDavid with the 33 points. Draisaitl had 32 in 16 games on one leg, 17 points in 5 games against the Calgary Flames. I was saying earlier, I mean, we've talked for a while about how Kyle Connor was long this underrated player, and I don't know how a guy that has had the accolades and won the awards that Draisaitl could be underrated, but I think at some point he is, because we spend so much time legitimately talking about Connor McDavid. Anyways, enough about those guys, but the one tie-in to the Jets from Edmonton was some news today that the Oilers may be moving on from Jesse Puljujarvi. Might he be a good fit with Winnipeg next season?
Yeah, Huss, I mean, it's an interesting one. I understand his underlying numbers are quite good. And what we know for sure, Huss, is that, until Patrik Laine kind of took off the year in 2016, the Jets had a lot of interest in Jesse Puljujarvi, right? Even as deep as the, U18s and Grand Forks. But they obviously made the right pick at the end, going with Patrik Laine. To me, Puljujarvi.
So did Columbus.
Yeah, fair point by you, Hustles. Puljujarvi to me is interesting. There's a lot of raw materials there, Huss. You got size, you got skating, and yes, the underlying numbers would suggest he could be a value proposition. But the hockey IQ portion is not quite at the level of the players the Jets are used to drafting in the first round. He can get to the spots and he can create the chances, but his finishing ability is not as good. And for a big body, he's not always as physically engaged. I actually quite liked him for parts of game 3, but then he got banged up. And anyways, this is my long-winded way of saying, Huss, I think he could be a guy that a team would take a chance on, but you're not bringing in Jesse Puljujarvi to solve your top 6 scoring woes, Huss.
I'm talking about your bottom 6. I mean, Ken, right now there's 7 guys signed for next season.
No,
and I
fair.
think, when we look at Winnipeg, I mean, Dubois, obviously top priority, but I mean, I'm not sure that the Winnipeg Jets run it back with the same guys, Appleton, Harkins, Svechnikov. They had Brooks and Sanford. I mean, there are some spots right now to be filled in. And, certainly I would say Puljujarvi is an intriguing prospect, considering it's not going to cost a huge amount from a contract side. And, there could be some sort of a fit that makes sense between the two clubs if they're talking about some sort of a deal for the rights of that player, and maybe someone on the back end from Winnipeg to open up some space for that glut of defensemen that many people feel are ready to play at an NHL level.
No, totally fine, Huss. And like I said, I'm not discounting it. I'm just not here to say that Jesse Puljujarvi is the solver of all problems when it comes to even complementary scoring. But could he be a useful player? Absolutely. I mean, there are two, but what are you giving a prospect to get him? I mean, if the Oilers are looking to shed salary, you're not dumping off one of the contracts, which is what the Jets would actually like to do, right? So, I mean, there could be a fit there for sure. There are going to be teams that are interested because the package is so intriguing us, right? That's the beauty of a player like Puljujarvi. I mean, this is a guy that should at will be a 20-plus goal scorer, but it just hasn't lined up for him so far. Would he be worth a flyer? I would definitely think that it makes some sense, but it depends on the cost, and it depends on the player's level of investment. I mean, I think that he would be a guy that could see an opportunity to do the job. But I mean, is he going to be riding shotgun with Adam Lowry, or does he have some top six potential there? Right. I mean, that would be the bigger question for me. But yeah, I mean, it's an intriguing. There's a lot of raw materials there. I'm going to go back to that. There's a lot of ability, and like I said, I know the underlying numbers are very good. I just didn't see him make much of an impact in that series. I know he had a couple nice shifts, but I left that series wanting more from Jesse Puljujarvi-Huss. That was
That's probably why he's going to be available.
Yeah, no,
to be very honest.
Totally, that's totally fine. But converting a project into a dominant force, I mean, that's not as easy as a lot of folks on the old Twitter machine might make it sound like. Is all I'm trying to say with that.
Well, and listen, Winnipeg won't need Jesse Puljujarvi to be the solver of all problems. That's Barry Trotz's job, right? Yeah. Let's get to the Trotz watch. It's been interesting to hear your colleague Elliot. We just played the clip a little earlier. It seems like the Winnipeg Jets are moving in a direction to maybe be a little bit more aggressive with talking to other candidates. Does that mean that things are not looking good for Barry Trotz, or just with the calendar and the time? Is that something that, as a general manager, you have to do your due diligence on that, knowing that it's far from a sure thing?
Well, that's the other part about what Elliot reported earlier in the week. I think that could be playing a bigger role, was that he's not even certain Barry is going to be coaching in October. So to me, if there is a debate as to, we knew there was some discussion that he may not be coaching right out of the gate, knowing that he still has another year to be paid. If that's the case, then you have to look at some contingency plans. And what I can tell you from being in Edmonton, Rick Tocchet and Kevin Cheveldayoff have had a conversation. We know that the links to Jim Montgomery were raised by Elliot, I believe, on the weekend as well. Not sure where it stands with Kirk Muller. We know there had been some interest in Kirk Muller. All of these guys are intriguing candidates, Huss. And then now, very similarly to when Barry Trotz became an unexpected free agent, the arrival of Bruce Cassidy in the unemployment line offers up a new level of intrigue for teams like the Jets and many others. I mean, I understand some Jets fans right away are, concerned by some of the buzz coming out from Don Sweeney and other suggestions that he was hard on young players. Oh, that's not a good fit. Bruce Cassidy just rolled with a set 679 winning percentage and made the playoffs in 6 consecutive seasons, Huss. So I'm here to tell you that I would expect there to be a conversation had between the two parties as well, just to see if there could be a fit, because this is a guy who's very structured. I understand some people say, oh, well, Claude Julien was there first and established the system. Well, Bruce Cassidy brought out a lot of the offensive of the Boston Bruins and didn't sacrifice on the defensive end. So I would say Bruce Cassidy is a very intriguing candidate. And Huss, I know we're always looking for the threads of connection. I mean, Bruce Cassidy in his first NHL job, when it didn't go so well, had Randy Carlyle on his staff. So the True North folks would be quite familiar with Bruce's coaching ability from that. And also, too, I mean, Bruce was, I think, with Grand Rapids in the American League at some point as well.
And IHL.
Yeah,
he went over. I think he had 1 year in the I and then 1 year in the A. Exactly the time that we ran. It was interesting to hear Elliot. He said someone from Winnipeg, and we hear this all the time. Like, why the hell are we just talking about guys that they know or that have some connection to the organization? And he expanded on that. That I guess in their mind, it's a very unique market and a unique job, and you need the right person that understands that market. How important do you think that is to whoever the next coach is for the Winnipeg Jets, as far as getting the most out of the roster?
Yeah, it's an interesting one to me. And, I've had this debate with several others about this whole narrative that it's, local connection or bust. I mean, let's go through the laundry list right now, Huss. Claude Noel, 1 year with the Manitoba Moose. It's not like he had 10 years with them. Wade Flaherty, there was a connection. Yes, he played for the Moose for 2 seasons. But Wade's connection was also with Kevin Cheveldayoff, having worked with the Blackhawks organization. Perry Pern was like original Jets. That had almost nothing to do with anyone except for Craig Heisinger. Let's go down the list. Jamie Compon, no connection to the organization. Todd Woodcroft, no connection. Paul Maurice, no connection. So to me, this whole narrative that all the Jets do are talk to people they know, I think is a total fallacy, Huss. And Jim Montgomery, he played 1 year for the Manitoba Moose. It's not like he spent 10 years here as the Jimmy Roy face of the franchise. Does that mean he's familiar with the city momentarily? Yes. Jim Montgomery played in the minors for, I think, a decade. So he spent like a small time capsule of his time in Manitoba. Does he know some people here? Sure. Would he be comfortable here? Absolutely. Does that help? Yes. But to me, this whole narrative that the Jets only hire people that they know are true north, I mean, it's total BS, Huss. They didn't know Pascal Vincent at all. Pascal told me this great story the first year he was hired. He didn't even believe it when Claude Noel called him, offering them the job. He thought one of his buddies was pranking him. So,
let me ask you this, because you're right. I mean, all that is true. Then why do we consistently hear list of guys where like 5 or 6 of them have either been here before, or connected, or know some guys before? Is that just the media getting ahead of themselves based on a narrative that's not really true?
I mean, we often try to connect the dots, Huss. I mean, I think I might have said this to you before, but if not, maybe it was with Jimmy Toth. But I mean, Scott Arniel, the reason Scott Arniel is on the list isn't because he lives in Winnipeg in the offseason and his wife Leah stayed here. He's one of the most highly respected assistant coaches in the NHL. That's why he's on the list. I mean, does it help that he coached the Manitoba Moose briefly? Of course it does. He got them to the Calder Cup final that year in 2009. But I mean, it's not the only reason. I mean, this guy's a good coach. I mean, for all the people that said it was, Dale Hawerchuk was going to become the Jets head coach, which would have been possible. I mean, Scott and Dale were best friends, and they talked hockey all the time. So I just think it's just so important to remember, Huss. Everyone thinks, did it go well for Scott Arniel in Columbus? No, it didn't go as well as he hoped it would. If he had waited one more year, he might have been the Jets head coach instead of Claude Noel, right? But you take the opportunities when they arise. Tons of coaches do a much better job in their second job. Bruce Cassidy is a great example. He was a .500 coach with the Washington Capitals, but part of that was because Jaromir Jagr basically sank his candidacy, right? So, I mean, everyone's saying, oh, well, Scott Arniel shouldn't be on this list. I mean, Scott's a very smart hockey guy, Huss. But, I mean, sorry, your original premise is, do I think it's important? I mean, it can be a benefit, but it's all about the personal fit. It was a personal fit for Paul Maurice because he was from Sault Ste. Marie and he embraced the opportunity to be here. He had no connection to Winnipeg whatsoever. So it's all about the mentality. I mean, you don't want a guy that doesn't want to be here. I mean, would it make sense for Barry Trotz? Of course. It would make sense for Barry Trotz if he was from, Saskatchewan or PEI, right? The guy's a good coach. Gerard Gallant would have made sense here because he's a good coach. So to me, there doesn't have to be a connection, but it can be a bonus. There's no doubt about that.
All right. Well, listen. Okay, before we finish up here, a little earlier than normal this week.
Sorry about the rant there.
Listen, I am here for it. I am always here for it, Ken. I like getting you going like that. If Barry Trotz is off the list, say he's not going to coach or he goes somewhere else.
Yeah.
In your opinion, who would be the best choice for the Winnipeg Jets? Who is the guy that if you were putting together your list is at the top, maybe slightly, but over the rest of a number of very qualified candidates?
Yeah, Huss, I mean, it's hard for me. It's literally 1A, B, and C situation. I think, Cassidy, whatever order you want to go in, Cassidy, Montgomery, Tocchet. I don't know what the list is. I think, Rick has enjoyed his TNT work, but this is a guy that wants to be behind the bench. I mean, he was a great associate in Pittsburgh. He did a nice job on the bench in Tampa Bay. I think that if the right opportunity came, he'd be great. Jim Montgomery dealt with him during the 2019 playoff series between St. Louis and Dallas. Exceptionally funny individual, very tactically strong. We know his record at the NCAA level. But I mean, Bruce Cassidy also has done a great job at both the minors and the NHL. I mean, these guys are all, I would put them on equal footing in terms. It's tough to say one over the other. And I should include Pete DeBoer in that. I mean, I talked with Pete briefly last week for my story on Nazem Kadri. We didn't get into the Jets thing with him because I was working on something else. But I think all those guys would be great candidates. And then, as I mentioned before, I mean, Scott Arniel, if he's on the staff, that'll help the Jets have a better staff, whether that's as an associate or if he's under consideration as the head coach. I mean, that's a possibility as well. And we know Pascal Vincent is also a good candidate. So I'm sorry that I sat on the fence there. All 5 of those guys are really smart guys and really good candidates. And they're probably not the only guys that would be candidates, right? I mean, that's the other part of the equation. But this whole thing about don't go to a recycled coach, I mean, coaches got to get their start somewhere. And a lot of times they're better in the second time around. So Bruce Cassidy doesn't strike me as someone you would say you're taking him out of the recycling bin. This guy was right in the heart of it and took one of the best teams in the NHL to Game 7 this year. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's interesting. And are there other young guys who deserve a chance? Absolutely. But I think what I'm trying to get at, Huss, is that some people got to the bury or bust situation. I mean, like I said from the very beginning, you're not going to fold the franchise if the Jets can't get Barry Trotz. They're pushing hard to get him. But there are other high quality, high character candidates who could do a good job. I mean, do they have the same pedigree as Barry? I mean, probably not. But that doesn't mean they can't do a good job.
Hey, just before we go, who are you playing with at the Grey Owl?
Darren Ritchie. Sorry, he is calling there. So sorry if that was sneaking through.
Well, you guys are planning your outfits for the tournament or what?
We're trying to get a game. Husk, you'll appreciate this. We're trying to get a game lined up at Oak Island tomorrow on the way down.
Love that
One of your favorite tracks. Exactly.
You know what? That is just a hidden gem. It's far away from everything, so it's always sort of open. But listen, I'm all in on that stop out west. Listen, have a great time at the Grey Owl, and I will look forward to speaking with you next week. Bring back some hardware. We'll let you go to the buffet about all your great shots. And listen, if you can possibly do the impossible again and hit 2 holes in 1 in the same round, you will be, well, you're already eternally on that list. No one can take that away from you. But you mix in even 1 ace in and around that sort of crowd and an event like that will, we might be erecting that statue that they were planning for Scheifele. We're going to make it for you, Ken.
Hustler, challenge accepted. Also looking to maybe hopefully play Gilbert Plains on Saturday. So it looks like a fantastic weekend all around, man. Good to be with you. Have a great week and enjoy the Eastern Conference Final as well.
Appreciate it. There's Ken Wiebe at Sportsnet.ca at Wiebe's World on Twitter. We are going to talk a little bit more golf. There's so much going on in the golf world. Most importantly, the RBC Canadian Open this week. And, of course, everything happening with the exodus of some big-name PGA Tour stars to the LIV Golf Tour. We'll do that in a second with Geoff Fienberg, all of our golf reports throughout the year, brought to you by our friends at Breezy Bend Golf and Country Club. If you're looking for an incredible home long-term for you and your family for your golfing future, talk to Corey Johnson over about getting on the waiting list for next year. Been incredibly successful a few years coming out of the pandemic. New course improvements, clubhouse improvements, that beautiful 19th hole patio, and more. Junior programs, women programs, they've got it all. breezybend.ca online, or as I said, give Corey a call and find out a little bit more. Hey, our friends at Knott Auto Corp are ready for the summer. If you're thinking about a new whip, before you do anything, head on down to Waverly and McGillivray and check out the experts at Knott and what they've got on the lot. And if there's a particular make and model you're looking for, they'll help you source it out and get it for you at the best price. Why not get into the car of your dreams at an amazing price with the help of the Knott team, Waverly and McGillivray? And, of course, you can check them out online at knott.ca. Hey, we got NBA Finals tonight. No hockey. Always a great night to pop by and set up shop at your local Boston Pizza. And don't forget about that great Appy Hour. They've got beer specials and appetizer specials from 3 to 6 every day, as well as 9 to 12. And hey, if you're staying at home and not heading out, check out their game day deals and order online at bostonpizza.com. And hey, a shout out to Mike Ladarney and a little apology. Remo and I screwed up. I thought he was taking care of it. He thought I was. Good news. We got that cake for you from our friends at the Nick and Nikki DQ group. Nick and Nikki, of course, serving up those amazing blizzards, stack burgers, DQ novelties, and of course those ice cream cakes at 4 locations: DQ Niverville, DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, and DQ St. Anne's. And if you do need a cake to order in advance, hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. We'll have it ready for you quick and easy to pick up at any of the 4 Nick and Nikki DQs. All right, let's welcome in our pal Geoff Fienberg, because it is Canadian Open week after 2 years canceled due to the pandemic, and maybe one of the most interesting weeks covering golf we've had in a long time. Fienberg, how are you? How's the wheel?
Wheel is improving, Huss. I'm not going to lie. I actually drove for the first time today since we'll call it the Super Bowl, because I took my spill the day before the Super Bowl. So that's a big step. But walking around a golf tournament, I'm not Arnold Palmer. Golf Canada's not going to give me a golf cart, Huss. Just, to like wave to the patrons. And I'm not really one who just wants to sit in a spot all day either. Like, I really do like to take it all in, be on the move. You know me with the bets. I like to follow. I'd like to get a look at as many guys as I could have. So yeah, it's sad. Happy for the Open to be back. It's just, for me, I'm gonna have to wait another year to take it in up close.
What do we know? What do you know about St. George's? Tell us a little bit about the course we're going to be seeing with a pretty awesome lineup, despite the dearly departed DJ who had to be ripped down from all of those banners all around your fine city.
Yeah, so St. George is a classical Stanley Thompson design, one of the true legends of Canadian golf architecture. Huss, it's only about 7,000 yards, but it can play quite penal, heavy bunkering around the greens, slopey greens, a lot of raised greens, like blind shots into raised greens, a traditional old-timey tree-lined golf course. I think that it was about 2010 or 11. We were here last. Swedish Meatball, Carl Peterson won. I think it was 14 under. I always get the vibe that one or two of these guys are going to take it real low, especially at a place where you think it could be shot make to death, Huss. I think we're going to flirt with 18, maybe closer to 20 under winning score this week, but a truly beautiful classic Canadian golf course.
Listen, I want to obviously talk about the guys that won't be here and what's happening with Liv, but let's first get into the Canadian Open, and we'll get to the Canadians in a second. Despite no DJ, you got the number one player in the world, Masters champion Scotty Scheffler. Justin Thomas is there. Rory McIlroy is there as well. There is some real star power at this tournament so far. I mean, what do you make of the depth of the field, especially with the guys at the top of the leaderboard that we got to swallow a bit of a bigger number than normal?
Yeah, so from a betting perspective, you can make the case, maybe not like the greatest field, not a ton of options, because we have 5 of the top 10 in the world here, Hustler, and that's a great credit to Golf Canada and NRBC the week before a major. We're seeing some of these younger guys now. Back in the day, it seemed like they all followed the Tiger routine of like, I can't play the week before a major, but Tiger was just, we've learned as time's gone on, he's just so much different than all of them, mentally, physically, and just so many levels that his preparation would have been so different. This new generation likes to get hot before a major and stay hot for that major. Field is great, but it's created a bit of a missing lane in the betting board. Very top heavy, a lot of, but that 30 to 80 to 1 range, there's probably as few betting options as there are like at any week of the year in total. It's probably like 10 guys in the 30 to 80 to 1 range, which is pretty strange. And that's the range a lot of golf bettors sort of like to build and make a card out of.
As far as the guys at the front, I mean, does one guy between Scheffler, McIlroy, and Thomas stand out to you? And I guess we can include Cam Smith. I mean, he's certainly contending week in and week out. And Sam Burns, who's had multiple wins already on tour. I really do focus in on those top 3, though. I mean, of that group, and you have to put a nickel on one of them, who are you leaning on?
I guess I would finally be ready for the damned burst for Rory, although you can make a case for all of them. Scheffler loses in a playoff a couple weeks ago with what we looked like was his C game. Thomas just continues this fabulous play, as does Rory McIlroy. If I did have to make a move, it would be on that probably 10 to 1 at Rory. Here's the thing. The week before a major, Huss, and it's not like I'm going to give you a bunch of bombs as my picks because I did not do that. But the week before a major, I mean, we had KH Lee pull his back-to-back this year, would have cleared 100 to 1. JJ Spawn would have cleared 100 to 1 the week before the Masters. Last year, I recall it was all 100 to 1 winners. Garrick Higo in this spot, in his second ever PGA Tour spot, pulls off a win at the Palmetto, replacing the Canadian Open. So the week before a major is always a bit of a potentially an interesting spot, but there's just too many great players here. It's hard to see it getting away from the group of them.
Who do you think the top Canadian will be, and how many Canadians? I'm just looking at a number right now on Coolbet. I mean, obviously there's tons of Canadians in the event because it is, and shout out to our guy Aaron Cockrell, who's making his PGA Tour debut after playing on the European Tour. I mean, he's a 300 to 1. But I mean, it looks like that number is 5.5 to make the cut. What do you think about that? And who do you think the top Canadian will be? Do you think any of the guys representing the country could be in the mix on Sunday?
Okay, so I haven't really heard that total to make the cut. I guess blindly I would lean to the over. There's just a ton of them in the field. If this golf tournament on this golf course, Huss, was played anywhere else in the world, I think I'd bet Corey Connors at 25-1. I think I'd bet Adam Hadwin at 25-1. And I'm going to preface what I'm going to say is that it could be old takes exposed by Sunday night. And I do agree that Golf Canada is in a better place than it's ever been. So to sort of compare Golf Canada even to anything pre-pandemic might be unfair. But your listeners, you, Remis, we all know this. We don't do these guys any favors this week. We do not. David Hearn was in the final group a couple years ago. We treated it like it was the freaking Masters. You know, some guys out there are just trying to win the RBC Open. Feels like the Canadians, we put this pressure on them that it's weird because you see like the Spanish Open and you see like a flock of Spaniards competing, or the Irish Open. There's always Shane Lowry and the guys fighting for it. Canada, I don't know. We seem to lack an ability to bring this thing home. I'd love to be dead wrong. I'm on a bit more of a fade of Canadians this week in the outright market. I've bet one, Nick Taylor, big bomb, 150-1. That is the Canadian that has my attention, but it is those long shots, Taylor, Svensson, that I'd probably rather bet than the big three of Connors, Hadwin, or Hughes.
Well, it all gets going tomorrow at St. George's, the RBC Canadian Open for the first time in 3 years. Should be a phenomenal event with some of the top players in the world. Of course, there are a few guys that aren't going to be here. First of all, let's start with DJ, because he was the first guy that stood up and said, yeah, I know I said 3 months ago, I'm committed to the PGA Tour. That has changed. You've always been a big fan of DJ. I mean, how surprised were you that, first of all, that he decided to go? And what has that done for some of the other top players that we said probably didn't want to be first, but don't want to miss the bag?
Yeah, you don't want to be last either, because the fields aren't so big, and it seems like if they get too many guys, they can really have leverage to start saying no to some. Not totally shocked DJ took the bag. He's always been kind of a guy that, you know, he was great at golf. But I don't know, you always got the sense that it was always just like a side hustle for him. And you can make the case, the PGA Tour might miss his wife more than they miss him. And I love Dustin Johnson. I love Dustin Johnson, but I'm not surprised one bit. He took the bag. He's exempt with these majors, so he's got some leverage to think that some of these other guys don't. I fully expect the majors don't want any of the legal smoke, especially a lawsuit that appears the live backers have told the players they will fund the lawsuit. So it's not like DJ would have to use his own lawyers if these majors decided to get some teeth. The Saudis are going to pay for the lawsuit, and I think they would win anything. You can't prevent guys who have qualified for the majors away. You can't exclude them at this point. You got to be Angel Cabrera in jail to not be allowed at the Masters, as far as I'm concerned.
Pretty much. But I mean, that really applies to a very small group of players on this tour. I mean, it's Dustin Johnson. Certainly Bryson doesn't have like he hasn't won a green jacket. He doesn't have that lifetime membership. He is a major champion. And Patrick Reed, he does have a green jacket, so he'd be in that case too. And Augusta seems like, I mean, they can do whatever the hell they want, and they will do whatever the hell they want. But they also want to have the best tournament as possible, and maybe not want to get in the middle of it. But we heard the U.S. Open today say, oh, you know, everyone's going to be welcome this year. Everything was non-committal going forward. Once this tour starts happening, they have events in the United States. That's going to be fascinating as well. Do you think it will come to that? I mean, will one or some of the majors try to block these guys from coming? And for guys that don't have already automatic qualifications, if they're not playing on the PGA Tour and they're playing on this live tour, are they getting official world golf ranking points? I mean, will that help them try to get into these? Or if you're not DJ or Patrick Reed, are you knowing, I'm going to be rich, I'm going to get paid, I won't golf as much, but I'm probably not having the same opportunities for the majors in the future?
Yeah, so I guess Kevin Knopp might have spoken about this more than any other player, and he's hopeful that at some point world ranking points would have to come there. If Bryson, there's an event in Portland in a couple weeks, or it's their next event, and this drip we saw today with Reed and Bryson, I think the drip is going to keep coming, Huss. At some point, if names of that even mid-tier status are playing, world ranking points at some point you think have to be acknowledged. Although the world ranking would say if you're playing 54 holes, I'm not acknowledging you. Kevin Nye even made it seem like he would go play some Asian tour events and maybe beat up on those fields to like get some world ranking points to sort of keep that number above water, which could keep him in the majors. It's such a fascinating conversation. And as much as like I'm curious what might happen this weekend to see, you know, what sort of television or broadcast, it's all on the YouTube, but like the little things about it, and you know, it's not going to go great. We're pretty confident in that. I'm not even interested in that, Huss. It's just this, we're so invested in the PGA Tour. And I'm not even talking about the betting or the DFS aspect that's grown so much in the past couple of years. Our whole lives, we've invested so much time and energy into following this league as the institution. So my peak interest, I am just in the discourse of the present and the future is so fascinating to me. I cannot deny that.
Well, and of course, I mean, there's all the political implications. I mean, if this was not funded by a regime that has a horrible human rights record, and, you know, we can go down that list, I mean, it's probably, you know, a lot less of a hot topic, although they probably don't have the billions of dollars to basically float out to do this. And that part of it, I'm not sure if you saw the press conference today with Ian Poulter and Lee Westwood. The one thing I'll say this, GMAC yesterday as well, like these guys seem woefully ill-prepared for the questions about their association with the Saudis that you know are coming.
That is 100% true, Hustler. And not to skip a beat, but next week is going to be madness at Brookline. It's a U.S. Open. I'll tell you right now, part of me is more excited for Monday through Wednesday than I am for the
press
weekend.
Conferences.
It's going to be crazy, and it's going to be overtaken because we're well past the point, I think, where it's just going to be sport media and golf media. I think it's going to be it's unfortunate to say, but like the complete, you know, polarization of like political media, especially in the States, like those opposite end spectrums are going to come there. And you know, they're going to make Rory answer a question about Nike as he's sort of giving his opinion on Saudi. And I'm not doubting the layers of hypocrisy that exist in society. And the whole geopolitical thing is such a well that we could go down, but it's just really how this affects the present and the future of golf, how this will affect the pipeline of young guys deciding, do I even want to go to the PGA Tour? What if you're just what if the top college prospect, NCAA ranked kid says, I'm going to go play live for 2 years instead of doing that Corn Ferry thing. And then I'll show up when I'm 24 or 25 to the PGA Tour. And he might be so good. It'll be like, if they make me Q school, if they make me Monday qualify, like I'm just taking the bag and then I'll go make Ryder Cups. Like if it comes out. There's just, my head is spinning with how many ways the conversation can go, let alone the players that can be leaving.
You're very much right about next week at Brookline. That will be a massive story for the days leading up. What about when this tour comes to the United States? And if I'm not mistaken, the first event is in Portland. I mean, I think back, like the Pacific Northwest is probably, if you were cutting up like political areas, probably the most left-leaning area in the entire United States. Is the Antifa crew going to be protesting outside the country club for the live event going on? I mean, do you anticipate anything happening like that? Or is this will be more a discourse between people on social media and obviously amongst regular media channels?
I honestly have no idea. I totally agree with your point. Portland, like the irony in it being in Portland is
I couldn't believe it.
Strange. I think we're going to see like more players, you know, sort of waiting to see and probably entering for that Portland event. Are guys like our live guys going to like walk the property next week and live t-shirts in their like team hats? Like, you know,
high
is
flyers.
Phil going to do his high presser and a high flyers hat? Like what are they going to, I am just so that Phil Mickelson, if he even has to do a press conference, it's going to be insanity and maybe almost to the point of unfair and the Boston crowd. Like people are expecting this Boston crowd to go at these guys. You know, Poulter and Sergio, they always get it bad at majors on the Northeast. But, you know, to see like the crowd, like going after Phil or D. It's just this weird. I don't know, man. Like, there's so many unknowns. I'm so fired up to think a year ago we were just excited about like the Bryson Brooks rivalry and how that could affect the circus that is the U.S. Open. That's got nothing on what we're coming up for, Huss. It's got nothing.
Let's talk about Phil for a minute, because we hadn't heard a peep from him for a number of months. He put out his press release earlier this week on his Twitter account, and I'm sure through his representatives. And then we saw him for the first time at the big Live red carpet event. And for a guy that said he'd been taking all of his time to get therapy and focus on his family, he looked like a guy that had just been on a 3-month bender, to be perfectly frank. You know, the guy that, is so crushed from a night in Vegas that he doesn't make it out of his hotel room till about 5:30 the next day and sort of gets it together and sort of kind of just easing into it. That was Phil Mickelson yesterday. I mean, where is Phil right now as a golfer, as a person, and what's going on behind the scenes? Because, man, there's been a lot coming out from this book, all tied to his being basically the lead individual in golf going to this tour.
Yeah, so there's just so much to unpack there. He certainly looked incredibly disheveled, did not look refreshed for a guy, he just looked like that bug-eyed facial hair. You think you wouldn't be clean shaven for someone who just gave you $200 million? Like, you think you would shave for that? Anyhow,
it's his NWO look.
Yeah, it's weird that at his press conference today, Huss, he didn't really want to acknowledge where maybe there might have been some discipline on the PGA Tour, created a bit of an awkward moment. He finds himself, Taylor Gooch gets to play the I'm stupid. Like, I'm stupid, I'm just a golfer, which is kind of, you expect like these guys who live their life in the dirt to get into your geopolitical issues when governments
DJ can lean on that one too.
Yeah, and DJ can too. But Phil, you have always prided yourself on being the smartest guy in the room. And we all know a guy who thinks he's the smartest guy in the room because he tells you. When we all know the actual smartest guy in the room doesn't tell anybody, people just know it is. But when you frame yourself as that forever, there then is an expectation that you can you'll have a proper answer, that you have researched the regime and sort of where this money's come from, because you are the smartest man in the room. So there's that juxtaposition now with, how he wants to play it to how he's always played it, Huss.
Geoff Fienberg with us, getting ready for the Canadian Open and the Live Golf Tour. Why Bryson and Patrick Reed? I mean, I sort of joked, because they're your guys and you've always backed them when just about everyone else can't stand them. Is there something to it, the fact that they're, not liked as much as many of the other players, and saying that they were more likely to go do that? Or is it all just simply can't turn away, like so many others have done, from the ridiculous amounts of money that are being thrown at them?
So that's the weird thing where we're still at this phase, Huss. Nope. Take Ricky Fowler aside, and his career arc has put him in this spot, and it's unfortunate because I would argue no player owes the PGA Tour more than Ricky Fowler for what they did for Ricky Fowler. The pedestal they put him on, probably when he didn't earn it. At least you can make the case DJ and Phil earned it to a certain extent. But you look, it's Reed, it's Bryson, it's Phil. They're all, I don't want to say hated, but they're all like Nas perpetually made fun of on the internet, the slow play. Bryson, that's a whole can of worms. Certainly there's not a bag of love for him. Reed is the bad guy. Phil has always sort of been this guy that disruptor, trailblazer, smartest guy in the whatever, man that wears all the hats. Dustin always a bit of aloof, and even rumors about some things that shady behavior he's been out to. I am waiting for like a beloved to drop, and I don't mean like Morikawa, Hovland. Like, I'm not saying they're going, but someone who is like beloved. And maybe that's a bad example. Those are young guys, but you sort of know what I mean. Like a player who is truly, I don't know, at this moment in time, beloved by the American golf fan.
Jordan Spieth.
That would be, that would be crazy. And Adam Scott, he was asked who he thinks going to go by his like burner / we all know it's a burner fun Twitter account. He says Brooks and Billy Horschel. And then not to like play this card, but the irony of Billy Horschel going to work for the Saudis. Well, like, you know, and then that whole Ralph Lauren thing. Well, they had to get rid of Justin Thomas for saying the word, a horrific word that deserved a penalty on the green. But like, there's just so many like spinning balls at the moment. And Brooks, he doesn't even like to practice. You don't think he's going for 14 events a year so he could just be Miami Brooks and play in majors? Like, I don't know, man. The drip's gonna get the sink's gonna fill up pretty soon, Huss. A lot of drips.
As far as the event goes, I have no idea how they came up with these team names. They should have done the draft publicly. I think that was a big missed opportunity. Like, do they know what they're doing?
Okay, that's a fair question because there's $1 billion that's been thrown at the wall. But these look like JPEG high school project assignment like logos. Like you think there'd be money to go get those people that do like that stuff for professionally. Like if a NBA team wanted to update a logo, you literally hire these very fancy graphic design firms. Like the money is so deep that when you see things like that, you're so confused. Like you have these endless bags of money, but then you put out these logos that look like high school class projects where you're learning graphic design. So like that's another juxtaposition that's so weird. There's so many wormholes here, Hustler, and it's not ending. They're only the questions. There's more questions than answers, a lot more, and it's intriguing.
Last question. Does Kevin Na, Dustin Johnson, Bryson DeChambeau, Patrick Reed ever tee it up in a PGA Tour event again after this weekend?
No.
Wow.
Majors, yes, but PGA Tour, I'm gonna say no.
Oh, here are the logos for folks that are watching with us on YouTube. The Crushers GC, the Fireballs. I think that's Sergio's team. High Flyers, Ironheads, Torque GC. And by the way, if you've read the descriptions as to how they came up with these names, it almost feels like, oh, geez, I guess we got to do this. And they did it like literally the day before.
Yeah. And then the team aspect's a whole other thing. I'm not really buying that, but whatever. We'll see where it goes, Huss. It's press conferences next week. They're gonna be wild.
Oh, it's gonna be. And then listen, this whole weekend we'll see what's happening over in London. Of course, we'll be following the action at St. George's for the Canadian Open. You got any more content coming up over the week? You guys gonna be doing a cut show or anything fun like that when with it being back on home soil? No. Doesn't seem like it. We'll just be full go for U.S. Open next week. We'll have that cut sweat. I'll leave you by saying I'm on Fitzpatrick, Hatton, and Finau this week, Huss, to bring it home. I had Reed, but that one got withdrawn. So, dude, thanks so much for the time. Let's do this next week for the Open. Maybe after some of the press conferences, because that might be, as you mentioned, more interesting than making our picks for the big event. It will be. Have a good one, dude. Thanks so much. Feel better. Later. There it is. Geoff Fienberg with us. Give him a follow on Twitter at GFienberg17. Hey, folks, we can pretty much tell you right now, and I know I mentioned this, but we are going to be getting together with our friends over at Little Brown Jug for a live show on June 24th down at Little Brown Jug in the tap room. Cannot wait to do that. Make a point of, if you can, maybe book ahead. If you've got some flexibility with the schedule, pop down and join us. Hopefully it'll be a great day outside. We'll be doing the show at Little Brown Jug on William Avenue on Friday, June 24th. And of course, we'll be letting the good times roll there. And you can let the good times roll with Little Brown Jug's Good Times Variety Pack for the summer, which includes their Hefeweizen, Saison, Black Lager, and Belgian IPA. And you're going to probably want a rack of the 1919s as well. You can find them at liquor marts, beer vendors, or online at littlebrownjug.ca. And keep your eye out for the Folkfest Lager, which has hit shelves at liquor marts and beer vendors in Manitoba. A crisp, accessible, quaffable lager that recalls the open prairies, pairs perfectly with live music and sunshine, and everyone will be tossing a few of those back at Folkfest coming up in a few weeks. As I mentioned, great night at Assiniboia Downs last night. Finished it off with a Canadian Club and ginger ale. And hey, for the next little while, if you pop into your Manitoba liquor marts and grab the Canadians beer stores and grab a 6-pack of CC and ginger, you get a free slim can koozie and an opportunity to win a Winnipeg Blue Bombers autographed jersey. So that's available now at your Canadian beer stores. And of course, CC and ginger and Canadian Club available at your favorite Manitoba liquor mart as well. We do have some Coolbet lines to get to, but let's get Michael Remis back in here as we get to that. Great conversation with Fienberg, and he and I probably could have gone on for another hour talking about this. It truly is one of the more fascinating stories in recent sports history, with the PGA Tour being challenged by a regime that obviously has some terrible political baggage. But speaking of baggage, the bags of money are so large that many of the best in the world can't resist going there. And how this thing goes forward this weekend, next weekend, for this year, and the future effects about the PGA Tour and the European Tour, well, we'll wait to see what happens. But this entire golf world being rocked, and I guess in some ways it's good for the players, but holy smokes, you get a lot of the politics into sports, which it's usually more fun to leave out.
Yes, I would agree, but I don't think that's something that is possible in recent days. So it is fascinating how the PGA Tour is being challenged, and maybe some things are right, but I think we can agree about the political issues and who you're getting the money from there. So I'm curious if it's going to work, if people are going to care. I mean, our BA split in chats right now, our live golf guy is going to be getting booed at the U.S. Open next week.
Fienberg brought that up. I mean, honestly, and I hadn't spent too much time thinking about that, but the fact that it's starting this week and then is the U.S. Open and some of these players will be in it, that it's almost unprecedented. And golf is one of those sports. Sometimes at the U.S. Open, the fans get pretty wild. Certainly the Phoenix event. But golf is still the stuffiest sport around, with traditions and customs and all those things that are more or less observed just about always. I'm sort of with Geoff. I'm not sure that that'll be the case next week. I think it'll be very challenging for the players, but nothing like the challenge of those press conferences that they're going to have to do. And if anyone's been paying attention to the players in London, I mean, today I referenced this. Lee Westwood and Ian Poulter were asked, is there anywhere that they would not play based on moral grounds? And they didn't want to answer the question. They asked if Vladimir Putin started a Russian tour and sent them money, would they play? They didn't want to say that. They referred to if there was it's apartheid South Africa, will they go? I mean, these are tough questions. I was amazed at the lack of preparation by these guys to be able to handle those questions that they knew were going. And certainly maybe no better example of that than GMAC, a guy that I love, Graham McDowell, who yesterday, essentially, I think, trying to be honest and forefront to basically just describe what sports washing is. So I understand why guys are doing it. It's pretty hard to turn away from that sort of life-changing money. But that's just what made a guy like Dustin Johnson move over that much stranger, I guess, because he's already had life-changing money. He's part of the Gretzky family. I mean, it's probably not that urgent for him, but 125 mil is 125 mil, I guess, to some people. It is good, though, for the tour that the Rory McIlroys, the JTs, and whatnot still on board. And it's funny that, like we just talked with Fienberg, Reed, DeChambeau, Brooke, or DJ, and Phil, very controversial figures, are the guys that have gone, and the ones that, have great sponsorship deals, continuing here, still part of the PGA Tour at the front of the line.
Yeah, Running Man, frequent chatter, didn't even recognize Phil in that picture. And I see everyone's calling him NWO Phil or Live Phil. The Phil we knew before, he's gone. He's a different guy now.
The NWO comparisons are so amazing because they're legit, for one thing. I mean, anyone that remembers wrestling and how they sort of grow up, took some of the biggest guys and then became bigger than the WWE for a while. Eric Bischoff was at the center of that. He always wore the black leather. NWO was the black and white. Phil dressed in all black with Greg Norman at the opening red carpet event, there was a picture of the two of them together. And I saw a couple tweets saying it's amazing how both of these guys kind of look like Eric Bischoff in this photo.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember them wearing the leather jackets. So yeah, I see people call him Hollywood, Hulk Phil. So a lot of compare. We'll see how that goes if people will actually tune in. I did like Fienberg. Yeah, I was gonna say I liked his line about the logos being designed like in Paint, Microsoft Paint.
The name, Phil's the captain of the High Flyers. Yeah, Sergio is the Fireballs. There's the Crushers and a bunch of, as I said, I'm not sure they spent as much time on this team format and then realized that, oh, geez, I guess we got to roll this out now that we've signed these guys to come and play on the Live Tour. Anyways, next couple of days, we'll be focusing on what's happening here in our country. That, of course, is the RBC Canadian Open. And that's sort of a nice little segue into our Coolbet lines. And we'll get to the NBA in a minute and the National Hockey League, but we have seen a little bit of line movement. When we were putting together the picks for the Lock Shop earlier this week, listen, Scotty Scheffler's been very good to me. He's still playing at an incredible level. I jumped on him as the favorite at 10-1. Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas were 11-1, but I think we're seeing sort of the top heavy nature of the field. All those numbers have dropped. Scheffler 9-1 now, Rory and JT at 10-1, Cam Smith at 13-1 from 14, Sam Burns at 17, and Matty Fitzpatrick, when I picked him, I'm glad Fienberg's on him too. That would be nice. He was at 20. He's now 19-1. Corey Connors is at 22-1. Adam Hadwin was at 50. He's now at 40-1. So it'll be interesting. I do think that maybe one of those names we just mentioned, though, is in the winner's circle. All sorts of great prop bets for this. They've got groups. They've got head-to-heads. Number of Canadians to make the cut. You can check that out all over at coolbet.com. As far as the National Hockey League, series is tied now. Tampa, the favorite to win the series at -161. The New York Rangers at +135. And the Lightning, a slight road favorite. A very similar line to we saw in games number 1 and 2, Reem, where the Rangers were able to win as home dogs. They're a home dog again, +108. Lightning -127. And in a lot of ways, I think tomorrow night's game sort of is the series. We know how impactful that game number 5 is in a series that's tied at 2-2 in a best-of-7.
I would say it is the series if Tampa wins. If the Rangers win, the Lightning will have a chance at home. So I don't mind Rangers as a home dog if they're flip-flopping. Actually, I probably wouldn't bet it now. You'd probably have to wait and see about Strome and Hedl, what their deal is. That's going to be big for the Rangers. So maybe I would hold off, or if you think they're going to miss, maybe just bet the Lightning, and because the line will move.
Yeah, I'll say this. Say this. I would tell you all that we'll talk about it and give you an update tomorrow, but I can pretty much guarantee no one's going to say a damn thing until they're out for warm-up and then literally dropping the puck at the beginning of the game. So just know those guys are questionable going in.
Yeah, the NHL likes to screw you if you're betting. Man, I've been doing where I'd play DraftKings in regular season, and some coaches, like Anaheim, they don't announce the goalie. I think LA would do this too, and I'd be like, okay, who's first out on warm-up? I'm like fiending for warm-up tweets 30 minutes before puck drop. So yeah, you are right. It's not like if they are playing, you're going to find out. They could play some trickery where they go out for warm-up and then don't play. That is a good point. They got to make rules on that. If they're going to have a million gambling commercials during the playoffs, like, let us know who's playing the games, right, Huss?
You know what? That is the most legitimate take around. Hey, you want to get in bed with all these companies and have us betting on the games? At least let us know who the hell is playing. So
we did have a good conversation off air before the show. I see a lot of people mad online about the amount of gambling commercials, and you and I have talked about this before, but the number of gambling commercials during the playoffs, and I said, yeah, I mean, my concern is zero. I don't really care. They can show commercials. But you actually had a great take to me where no one's here saying, let's see more Sobeys commercials, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I find when Cabby does his bit with our guy, Andy McNeil, they're talking about the updated lines. Andy's giving us a little bit of information that might help you make a bet. It's all paid programming, folks. I would rather watch that than another stupid bank commercial or the Sobeys guy running through the frozen aisle. Or, I mean, for crying out loud, remember when people were so pissed off about Gord Miller and Cassie Campbell showing up 18 times a Jet game with that Sobeys score and win commercial? Like, the fact of the matter is there's a lot of it. I get it. But it's sort of a new medium, and it's been a huge source of revenue for a company that has been bleeding money ever since they paid $5.2 billion that with a B dollars for the Canadian NHL rights. I don't think they've ever made money on the package yet. And again, who cares really? But I'm sorry, if you're getting the stuff over free television, advertising is going to be a part of it. And if it's up to me, I'd much rather see what some of the other books are doing and some promotions, or talk about the games, at least in some way in advertising, as opposed to, you know, Tim Hortons, Sobeys, Banks, or whatever that's normally in the games. I mean, as I said, people just like to be mad online, and this is the new trigger point for people.
I think I think you're right. No matter what the commercials are, people are mad at them. We were still talking about what, Farmers Only and the Sticky from the Jets TSN days.
The first year of Winnipeg Jets hockey, it was Jets on TSN, and you had to get that package. They didn't have any time to sell it, and I think they basically went to one of those companies that just has all of these infomercials, and they say, "Yeah, we'll buy these amount of spots. You put it all. Let's get the highlights." There was the Sticky.
Mm-hmm.
Zoomies was a big one. Vince Offer had a couple one after the Sticky. Oh, the Slap Chop.
Wait, the Sticky, yeah, he had all those Slap Chop. I almost
the Slap Chop got a big run. The Sticky was big. Zoomies was huge. Oh, the Bacon Wave.
Oh yeah, Bacon. Yeah, I like Bacon Wave. I like that commercial. Never tried it, but yeah. So I think
if we're missing one in the chat, let us know your favorite infomercials from Jets on TSN from the first season.
Yes. So, and people writing them in chat. So, yeah, I think people are gonna get upset at the commercials, no matter what. As we said,
Farmers Only was real. I'm not sure. Let's see. Is Farmers Only still on? Let's just put it in here. Let's see. Maybe I'll open an account.
They haven't converted to an app where you can just swipe.
Well, that's a good move. Swipe right on. Oh, farmersonly.com. Their tagline: "City folks just don't get it." And single in the country, you put it in, and oh my God, a beautiful picture of two people that are coming together in love, standing in a field in the middle of nowhere. Farmersonly.com. Very intrigued. Would this be sort of like catfishing if you went in, legitimately said that you were self on Farmers Only, except you lived in the city and weren't actually a farmer or a country guy?
I don't think they'd
get kicked off the platform.
I don't think they'd let me in.
I think that's actually why you have to put your zip code or postal code in, to make sure that you're not a city slicker. It's the first thing. Email address and then zip or postal code. That's the second question on Farmers Only.
I'll have to Google a fake one. They must have it marked down. I just wanted to bring that up. It seems to be coming up on my timeline every day. I don't have any. I got to say, I'm thankful there's no Assiniboia Downs tonight, because I need a break. My picks are very ice cold. You lost yesterday as well.
I lost. I had a nice win actually at the track there. I had a Quinella. I bet $4 on a Quinella that came in on $2 bet at $13.50. So actually $127, but then lost it on a couple of other races. We just had a great time though. And we're working on a little contest as well with our friends at Assiniboia Downs that will launch in the next couple of weeks, where we'll pick a race every day when we're doing our picks, give you the opportunity to make your selection. You can email it into our friends at Assiniboia Downs, and we'll be picking one winner a day to come out on a night, probably end of the month, early in July, where myself, Remis, our winners, will hang out. We'll have an incredible feed at the world famous Assiniboia Downs buffet, including that prime rib. My God, it was good last night. And have some fun picking some winners and hanging out. So keep an eye on that. Make sure you join us on YouTube. We'll actually open it for podcast listeners as well, because it'll basically be done by email. You'll just have to get it in by a certain time. By the way, Coolbet lines tonight. Oh, I should mention NBA tonight. Celtics 3.5-point favorites at home against the Warriors. That series is 1-1. Boston now has home court on account of their win in Golden State. Celtics, Golden State Warriors, actually a very slight favorite, minus 111 for the series, and the Celtics minus 105. Man, Golden State was shooting well, Reem, and they played great defense in game number 2. A major improvement from that collapse in game number 1. Looking forward to this game tonight with no hockey. I'll be watching that because, of course, the Blue Jays are in action this afternoon against the my pathetic Kansas City Royals. Although the Royals up now 6-3 in the bottom of the 5th. Maybe we'll check out some of that game after we finish it up. Should be a good show tomorrow. Brandon Rewicki's going to join the program. We'll have more Bomber talk with Darren Bombing. Probably get into some of the Canadian Open first round coverage as well. And then on Friday, Murata Tesh will join the program, and we'll tee up Bomber season with AJ Jakubek, voice of the Ottawa Redblacks, and hoping to have our guy Eddie Tate join us as well. What's up tonight, Reem? You're back at the zoo. You're running around a soccer field. What's going on? What's on the agenda?
The zoo closes at 5. I don't know who owns it, but I wish they had later hours. I'll just say that. But working on some administrative stuff for this. I'm always working on new YouTube videos. Check out Kyle Connor's interview from yesterday. That's on our channel. No hockey tonight, though. That is true. I can catch up on some shows, maybe finally start second half of Ozark. As you said, NBA. What else? I got a bunch of shows in the queue, but I'll mostly doing this. I don't take any time off, Hustler.
You know what I'm going to do?
What?
I'm opening up a Farmers Only account right now, and I'm just going to be checking my inbox all night. Sit at the bar going, anyone in? Anyone in? By the way, if you've got a rural postal code, someone can float me. Let me know because I might get banned on the Farmers Only platform.
I'll tell you, actually, I got to start reading up on CFL season previews. DraftKings season starts. I'm very pumped. I love doing CFL fantasy. I've learned so much about the league from playing.
Hey, throw that link in the chat before we're done. I was actually just looking at that. So the great thing is, before we had a tough time. If contests were bigger than 20, we couldn't make them bigger because if they didn't fill, they didn't happen. They finally changed that after, I don't know, God knows how many emails we sent to them. But we've made it a max of 75 players. We are now over 40. So we've got 41 right now. It will resize. But if you haven't gotten in, jump in it. It's $3. Pick whoever you want. Salary cap game. Very, very fun. And I think the one thing we've had the most fun consistently with, because we're such a good CFL market, has been these CFL contests. So everybody invited. Real fun way to kind of get a little bit more action over the course of the weekend for $3. And what is it? Top 5 paid, Reem?
I actually did I did 75 people top 10 wins. So if we get to, I don't think we'll get to 75. I think we can get to 50. We're at 44 right now. So any more is a bonus. So 20%, if we get to 50, we'll win.
See how it goes. And of course, tomorrow night is also CFL kickoff, Calgary and Montreal on TSN. And then our boy Dustin Nielsen, who'll be coming back. By the way, I have to tell you this quickly on the way out. We have talked about the Whistle Dog at times and the fact that it is no longer available at A&W restaurants. Dusty and Eric have been leading the charge to bring back the Whistle Dog, especially Eric, day in and day out for well over a year. Eric also tweets every day at A&W to bring back the Whistle Dog. Well, today, in an unbelievable moment, the A&W guy from the ads barged into the studio with 2 trays and A&W Whistle Dogs for the guys. It was in an A&W packaging. I think they described it as having a Blue Jays thing on it. So I'm not here to tell you it is confirmed that the Whistle Dog is back, but all indications from what happened this morning on the Nielsen Show in Edmonton, we could be preparing for the return of the Whistle Dog, and that would be one of the best pieces of news in the fast food game we've had in a long time. A&W does a lot of things right. Burgers great, onion rings, but man, I was a huge Whistle Dog guy and definitely have missed it since it disappeared from the menu.
I was really saddened when it went away. I didn't understand. At least, if you're going to do that, bring it back limited time only like Wendy's does with the bacon mushroom melt. So if it's back, I'll go get one for sure. I'm in.
Yeah, and the Wendy's people, if you're listening, wake the hell up. That thing should be on the menu 12 months a year. Why it's not is a big L for everybody involved.
I've tweeted Wendy's, not every day, but every year. They're like, oh, bacon. I mean, just like make it a permanent menu item. What are you doing? It's better than the Baconator. And they never respond because they know I'm right.
No, no doubt. Oleg's with me. Hot dog's so delicious. Oleg agrees. I have to maybe, where's the best hot dog in town? That's another one for us. VJ's. Dairy Whip might be my favorite. But we'll have a hot dog conversation at some point during the summer when there's not as much going on. Tomorrow, still counting down to the CFL season, bombing on the Bombers. We'll have Brandon Rewicki talking Jets, NHL, probably talk a little golf with Brandon as well, and much, much more. Thanks again to all the sponsors for their support of Winnipeg Sports Talk. Thanks to you for making us a part of your day. Again, if you're on YouTube, make sure you hit that red subscribe button. And for you podcast listeners, if you have the opportunity to go on Apple or Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a little blurb or review. Always appreciate that as well. Thanks to Geoff Fienberg. Thanks to the well-hydrated Ken Wiebe. And, of course, the voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers on CJOB, Derek Taylor, for joining us today. Folks, have a great night. Enjoy the weather. Get outside. Beautiful sunshine. And we'll see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on WST.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.